may have catapulted himself to the top echelons of the Palestinian leadership after Saturday's attack. Bureau Report, India Today.
A continuous coverage even on the other side of this break. We're getting you the latest pictures from ground zero as far as the war is concerned. Remember, my colleagues Ashutosh Mishra and Gaurav Sawant are the only Indian journalists present on ground zero, getting you up to speed with every single development in Israel, the Gaza Strip and Palestine. For the moment, it's time for a quick commercial break here.
Israel-Hamas blood feud returns. All-out war engulfs West Asia.
Again you hear another blast.
Fearless reportage and exclusive news breaks.
तो यहाँ से एक ground report दिखा रहा हूँ. किसी भी समय यहाँ कुछ भी हो सकता है.
India's biggest conflict reporters, live and exclusive.
You just heard those sounds of the blast. Is the real images. Look at the massive destruction.
West Asia war through India Today cameras.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest Be Sustainable Change, a B&P Group company.
Seen in Israel over the past 36 hours are truly horrifying. I want to express my absolute solidarity for the people of Israel. Now is not a time for equivocation, and I'm unequivocal. Hamas and the people who support Hamas are fully responsible for this appalling act of terror, for the murder of civilians and for the kidnapping of innocent people, including children. I've just spoken with Prime Minister Netanyahu to assure him of the UK's steadfast support as Israel defends itself against these appalling attacks. We will do everything that we can to help. Terrorism will not prevail.
This is the worst attack on Israel since 1973, the Yom Kippur War, almost exactly 50 years ago. But there's a fundamental difference. That was a war that was state to state, country to country, army to army. This is a massive terrorist attack that is gunning down Israeli civilians in their towns, in their homes, and as we've seen so graphically, literally dragging people across the border with Gaza, including a Holocaust survivor in a wheelchair, women and children. So you can imagine the impact this is having throughout Israel, and the world should be revolted at what it's seen.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest Be Sustainable Change, a B&P Group company.
Weather forecast now. Delhi, maximum 33 and minimum 28 degrees. Mumbai, maximum 30 and minimum 26 degrees. Kolkata, maximum 34 and minimum 25 degrees. Bangalore, maximum 28 and minimum 22 degrees. Chennai, maximum 31 and minimum 27 degrees. Hyderabad, maximum 31 and minimum 23 degrees.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest. Be Sustainable Change, a B&P Group company.
Hello, very good morning. You're watching India Today TV. Israel continues to be our top focus. We're getting you up to speed with all the ground reports from Israel. My colleagues Gaurav Sawant and Ashutosh Mishra are sending us all of those details. First, a quick check of the headlines. Israel death toll now mounts to 900. Israel asks citizens to prepare safe rooms, warns Gaza with use of enormous force.
Israel is at war. We didn't want this war. It was forced upon us in the most brutal and savage way.
Moment of attack on Israel Music Festival caught on camera. Armed Hamas terrorists swoop on festival. 260 young men and women. Partygoers butchered by Hamas here. Hamas threatens to kill hostages. Hamas warns of live televised executions. Says, target us, will execute hostages. Israel unleashes air attacks on Gaza. Gaza Finance and Transport Ministry destroyed. No food, fuel or electricity for Gaza. Amid massive humanitarian crisis looming in Israel and Palestine, India Today reports some crossfire. Only Indian crew in battle epicenter.
Equipment and ran for safety. As of now, that rocket has been intercepted. No damage on ground, no loss of property.
Israel-Palestine war enters day 4. Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to launch a massive attack on Hamas with unprecedented intensity. While Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has called for UN mediation to prevent a humanitarian crisis from happening. As Israeli Defense Minister orders complete siege Gaza Strip with no electricity, food or fuel, Israeli defense forces began the ground invasion of Gaza. Israel's military relentlessly pounded the Gaza Strip, hitting more than 500 targets in the blockade area as fighting raged with the Hamas. Clashes in Israel rage on as Hamas fighters still hold out. The toll in Israel has now risen to 900 people, with over 2,600 injured here. Rockets continue to rain on the city of Escalates in South Israel. Dashcam footage of the Supernova Music Festival showed how Hamas attacked Israeli youth, killing 260, abducting several more.
We're currently in the Ashkelon area of southern Israel, and you can hear the air raid siren immediately went off, and moments after that air raid siren, you had a number of rockets that came in and effective countermeasures. Immediately you could hear very effective countermeasures being taken. We rushed to the inside this shelter here. You can see the damage. We left our equipment. Our equipment was on the road. We just left our equipment and ran for safety. As of now, that rocket has been intercepted. No damage on ground, no loss of property. It's over. Okay?
No. 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and after that you can go.
Okay, so it's still not all clear. Okay,
2 minutes, 5 minutes.
Okay, so we are being told another 2 to 3 minutes we need to stay inside, and after that we can come outside. But as of now, all people, just watch, everybody just left their vehicles in the middle of the road wherever they did and rushed to the nearest shelter. That is now standard operating procedure. The situation here in Escalates in southern Israel, you can look at the damage. This is a bank, it's a huge bank. The rocket fell very close to this area, and you can see the damage to the bank and the shops all around. In fact, even this shop behind me, you can see the damage that was caused. All the window panes shattered, this shop, destruction immense. But as of now, the effort as far as the locals are concerned, this vehicle, they just left all their stuff, came inside the shelter. That's my tripod, that's my bag. The moment the air raid siren came off, we just left everything and came inside the shelter. Gaurav Sawant in Escalates, southern Israel, reporting for India Today.
In fighting Hamas, Israel is not only fighting for its own people, it is fighting for every country that stands against barbarism. Israel will win this war. And when Israel wins, the entire civilized world wins. Israel is at war. We didn't want this war. It was forced upon us in the most brutal and savage way. But though Israel didn't start this war, Israel will finish it. Once the Jewish people were stateless. Once the Jewish people were defenseless. No longer. Hamas will understand that by attacking us, they've made a mistake of historic proportions. We will exact a price that will be remembered by them and Israel's other enemies for decades.
Demands for ground offensive continue, and Gaurav is in fact getting us up to speed with every single development. He's joining us live right now from Ashkelon. Gaurav, give us a sense of what really is expected in days and weeks to come as far as the global situation vis-a-vis this huge humanitarian crisis is concerned. Is that the West has thrown its weight behind Israel, and that is evident from the kind of support also that's coming, isn't it? Military support that's coming.
So the world has thrown its weight behind a democracy that's been targeted by radical terrorists of the Hamas. Point one. Point two, you're absolutely right. The Americans, they've sent their fleet into the Mediterranean. It's an aircraft carrier battle group, and this is a very formidable flotilla which has one aircraft carrier with about 100 fighter jets, electronic intelligence aircraft, helicopters, assault helicopters, support ships. There are submarines, there are frigates, there are destroyers. So it's like a huge flotilla. It's like a floating war city that the Americans have sent into the Mediterranean Sea. And this is a message that goes out to other countries in the region not to get involved. In fact, the United Arab Emirates, they've sent out a very stern warning to Bashar al-Assad of Syria not to let the Syrian-controlled territory be used, the area around the Golan Heights. Now, the Hezbollah could also launch an attack from there. Apart from the Syrian-held territory, the Lebanon, from the Lebanon border, the Hezbollah's already tried to target Israel in the Sheba Farms area. Of course, that's disputed territory, but in the Sheba Farms area, when several rockets were fired, Israel hit back and hard. One of the Israeli radar stations, a listening post, was targeted by the Hezbollah, and information is that 3 of their terrorists were neutralized. That's point 1. Point 2, in the south, in the north, the battle is actually, troops are going in, but for preparation to protect their territory. But when it comes to the south, preparations are on in a huge way for a ground assault. It's only a matter of time. Perhaps it appears that Israeli soldiers will move in. They have their armored personal carriers and their tanks already in place and in large numbers, and people are volunteering. Well, reservists have been called out, and 3 lakh reserve soldiers have also been deployed in various locations for internal security, for medical support, for various other things, plus the combat elements. They are now gearing up for a huge offensive. So over the next several days and weeks, this war is likely to escalate in a huge way, given the fact that a large number of Israeli civilians are being held hostage by the Hamas, and to take them out safely, ground offensive may be required. And hundreds of trucks like this are on their way to the border carrying resources, equipment, food, military supplies for the offensive that may be required, and people are now gearing up for that offensive.
Gaurav, maybe a little too soon, but to ask this question about what Israelis are feeling about this conflict and how they hit them really from nowhere. But outside of Israel, yes, questions are being asked. What was the Israeli army doing? What was the government doing, given that this planning has been happening for months together, isn't it?
Oh, you're absolutely right on that account. This planning would have taken a lot of time, a lot of resources, financial resources, material resources, military resources, and Hamas on its own couldn't have done it. Israel is very clear. Iran is behind it, and that is why one of Israel's main efforts is to ensure that while Hamas is decimated, Hamas backers are also not in a position to create more terrorist organizations. How this will actually be done on ground is easier said than done. Considering this is a battle that's lasted a very long time. This is just the latest and perhaps the deadliest ever round, where according to some accounts there are about 800 plus, some say 900 Israeli civilians who were massacred by Hamas terrorists. There are also reports that say that this wasn't an attack. Remember, when India was hit by Pakistani Lashkar-e-Taiba terrorists, there were 10 terrorists who'd come from across the border in Pakistan, and they'd also taken the sea route. This time, the assessment in Israel is at least 800 to 1,000, if not more, Hamas fighters came in. Some came in through that hang glider route, some came in through the sea route, but the majority came in pickup trucks, armed to the teeth. They came in minivans, they came on motorcycles, 3 riding 1 motorcycle, and in hundreds and hundreds, wave after wave, these terrorists came and went into locality after locality, village after village, town after town, and massacred people. 260 at that rock concert itself, at that music festival itself. So right now, there is tremendous anguish and anger in Israel and demand for firm retribution, whatever the cost.
Firm retribution, which also translates to this being a prolonged war. Hamas says we are ready. Further escalation on both these sides, isn't it? Given that Iran has backed Hamas, of course, they continue to deny that. Iran has said we are not in this. And the kind of support that has come in from the West as far as support to Israel is concerned. Gaurav.
You're absolutely right. This is a very difficult situation as far as Israel is concerned, given the fact that there are hostages. Initial report were dozens of hostages. Now reports seem to indicate much more have been taken hostage, and there are little children, there are women, there are the elderly. We were listening to one account which said that, in one family, several people, so the grandparents, the mother and two children, so 3 generations of one family taken hostage by Hamas, and some of the members of that family said that the mother had dementia, she had her medicines, no medicines given to her, they just do not know what her condition could be. So each story that we hear about, each story that we read about, each person we interact with, each story is more horrifying than the other. Nothing prepared Israel for this, and now they say perhaps nothing has prepared Hamas for the consequences that Hamas will face. Now, how long will that take? As you asked, is this a long-run affair? Very likely, because so far there have just been aerial attacks and rocket and missile attacks that have happened. Ground troops are being amassed to be sent across. At the same time, there is an apprehension, as Hamas says, if there are more aerial attacks, each day they will take out one hostage. They will kill one hostage, and on live television. This is exactly like what the Islamic State terrorists used to do. If Hamas is doing the same or threatening to do the same, executing people on live television, because like the Islamic State, they've also been using GoPro cameras to shoot their killings inside Israeli territory, and they were not taking on combatants in every situation. They were also killing innocent civilians, the elderly women, the young children, toddlers were killed. In all of this, Israel says Hamas is no different than the Daesh, than the Islamic State terrorists.
Well, absolutely. Gaurav, since you mentioned hostages, yes, the concern is because the threat has been issued by Hamas already, that every building destroyed will be in fact responded to by a live execution that's going to be televised. That's a worry, that's a concern. How many hostages are there with right now with Hamas, and what does Israel really plan to do to bring them out?
So Israel, again, is using both its intelligence network, its electronic intelligence, its signal intelligence apparatus and its assets on ground. At least that's the information we've been able to glean to figure out where the hostages are. And very clearly, at least on ground, we are being told that those numbers are not in dozens. They are much, much higher. The apprehension is while they were taken in, the hostages, they've not been kept in any one location. They've been spread out. They've been split up. Families have been split up, and apparently they've been kept in a maze of tunnels along the Gaza Strip. Some of these tunnels have been exploited by Hamas terrorists in the past to carry out terrorist attacks into Israel. And it's a very complex maze of tunnels, we are told. Now, in that complex maze of tunnels, these hostages could have been kept. How do you rescue them? If more soldiers go in, the Hamas terrorists could have rigged those tunnels with explosives. They could detonate those explosives, and not just the hostages, but even the rescue teams could be, in the line of fire and in grave danger. So these are some of the huge challenges that the Israeli defense forces, the Israeli security forces face as they prepare to mount operations, more than just air attacks, to decimate the Hamas leadership. Also, at the same time, there are intense negotiations that are also being carried out for safe rescue of the hostage, for the safe release of the hostages. But as we've seen in the past, as in the case of a soldier who'd been held captive earlier, it took half a decade, it took 5 years for the release of that soldier, in which Israel had to release a large number of Palestinians in return. So that is a long-drawn affair. Right now, Israel is actually gearing up for a massive military offensive, as the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu pointed out. Sneha. All right.
Gaurav, I'm going to thank you for the moment. Gaurav is getting us all of those details live from Tel Aviv. And right now joining me is Shani Moore, researcher, Israel Democracy Institute from Tel Aviv again. Thank you so much for your time, hoping and praying for your safety and that of your loved ones. I want to begin by asking you, as far as the support from the West is concerned, that has been forthcoming on one hand as far as Israel is concerned. On the other hand, we have the Hezbollah clearly saying that we are backing Hamas. And of course, we know how Iran has backed Hamas. This only is going to lead to further escalation and prolonged war, isn't it?
That's certainly a possibility. It's hard to predict how it pans out. But yes, the main state sponsor of Hezbollah is Iran. which is also, in a much less direct way, the main state sponsor of Hamas. To the extent that Iran has its own regional ambitions and its own goals, not least of which is scuttling the Israeli-Saudi normalization deal that the Biden administration has been working so hard on, then that's where they stand. They are willing to pursue their interests to the last drop of Palestinian, Lebanese, or Syrian blood. The Iranians, that is.
Right. I also want to ask you, what's your comment and your take on what's being said by many outside of Israel, essentially, who say that this is really about the Palestinian cause, the right to self-determination, and Israel started this first in essentially defending Hamas and their actions?
Yeah, I'm not surprised by this nonsense. There's nothing that's been more destructive to Palestinian self-determination than actions like Hamas. It doesn't come isolated. It comes as part of a long history. Palestinian politics for a century has been dominated less by the desire to establish their own state and more by the burning desire to prevent the establishment and then destroy the Jewish state next door. There have been so many countless times when the Palestinians could have established their own state by peaceful means or even less peaceful means, through international mediation, through direct negotiation with Israel, and have rejected them, have rejected anything that involves reconciling themselves to the existence of a Jewish state next door. In the case of Gaza, Israel withdrew from 80% of Gaza in 1994 in the context of an Israeli-Palestinian peace agreement, and it immediately became a base for Palestinian terrorism. 11 years later, in 2005, Israel withdrew completely from all that remained of its presence in Gaza, including settlers and civilians. This self-governing, essentially, city-state, which could have been a Singapore on the Mediterranean, became a base for this kind of nihilistic, destructive Hamas terrorism. It instantly became a base for rocket attacks in Israel and attempted terrorist infiltrations. The way that Hamas, not just Hamas, but the way that the Palestinian leadership and society has used the absence of any Israeli presence since 2005 is not entirely different from the way it used and abused the years of autonomy in the Oslo process and the way it used and abused and misused the British mandate. In all three of those cases, an opportunity for building a self-determining, self-governing society was squandered when the priority was on murdering Jews.
That's right. Also, my last question to you is the manner in which, things have moved over the last 3 days or so, beginning the attacks on Saturday. What's your view on how the United Nations or in this case, the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, can intervene in this entire situation?
I don't think that either the ICJ or the UN has any particular role to play in this situation. I don't anticipate them having a positive role, if any at all. I'm very heartened to see the incredible support that Israel has received from its allies in the West. And I hope this stays and remains the case through some difficult days ahead. It was easy for them to come with pronouncements supporting Israel after this horrific massacre that happened on Saturday. But I suspect that much of this support will be tested for real in the coming days and weeks.
All right. I'm going to thank you, Shanimor, for joining us with your views on that story. And we're keeping our eyes firmly on all developments from Israel. Here is more news that's coming in. Let's go straight to these developments. Hamas refuses to negotiate on Israeli hostages, says no negotiations on Israeli captives under fire. Regime must pay high price. The Palestinian Hamas group has said an ongoing operation against Israel will continue while rejecting any negotiations on Israeli captives as long as the regime's attacks on the besieged Gaza Strip continue. This is a huge cause of concern given the hostage crisis, the videos of which are being regularly put out by Hamas, speaking volumes of the atrocities, the manner in which hostages, women and children, even infants in some cases, have been taken hostage by the terror group Hamas. They refuse to negotiate on Israeli hostages and have said that no negotiations on Israeli captives can take place. The regime must pay a high price, is what Hamas has said. We're getting you the details of the hostage crisis. As far as Hamas terror group abductions are concerned, the war between both these countries is turning grimmer with each passing day, essentially. Hamas has also now said that with every building that is brought down in the Gaza Strip, there is going to be a situation of a live telecast or a televised execution of an Israeli hostage, be it a man, woman, child or infant. Well, even as Israel's counter-strikes at Gaza are far from over, Hamas has announced it will begin execution and live televised killing of Israeli hostages for every building bombarded in the Gaza Strip. In a statement by Abu Ubaidah, a spokesperson for the military wing of Hamas, Al-Qassam brigades in Al Jazeera threatened Israel with dire consequences if Israel launches any further attacks at the Gaza. Meanwhile, hundreds of Israeli citizens are being held hostage by the Hamas. As per reports, the latest information is about the abduction of a woman, Doron, and her 2 daughters. Another girl, Noah, who was enjoying a party with a partner, was also abducted.
From this moment, we announce that for every attack towards our people who are safe in their homes without prior warning, unfortunately we have to execute one of the civilian enemy captives that we have hostage. And we will be forced to broadcast this in video and audio. We announce this decision and we hold the responsibility in front of the whole world to the Zionist enemy and its leadership that they are responsible for this decision.
Israelis have been taken hostage by Hamas terrorists. Among them are several youngsters who were attending a music festival. One of the most devastating images has been of a 25-year-old young woman, Noah, who seen pleading for her life while sitting on the back of a Hamas terrorist motorcycle. She was forcefully taken away.
Women tortured, murdered and spat on. Students abducted in broad daylight. These videos give you a glimpse of the horror that's unfolded in Israel over the weekend as Hamas groups entered the country and targeted innocent women. Unfathomable atrocities have taken place in Israel, particularly at a rave party near the Gaza Strip, where hundreds of casualties were reported. The count is at 260 currently from this gathering alone. In this video posted by one of the partygoers, Hamas terrorists can be seen paragliding into the party venue even as attendees dance away, with no idea of the bloodshed that would take place just seconds later. As terrorists indiscriminately opened fire, youngsters can be seen running for their lives and hiding behind tents. Some are badly injured and bleeding, but in a better condition than many others, particularly women. 30-year-old Shani Nauk, seen here dancing with her friends. She, unfortunately, was one of the casualties of the Hamas carnage at the rave party. The German citizen, an Insta influencer, was tortured brutally and finally killed. And this video shows the horror of what they did to her. Shani was abducted, tortured, her limbs broken, and body then dumped in a pickup truck. Shani's body then face down was sat upon by terrorists as Hamas supporters spat on her body. Her remains are yet to be found, and her mother has now put out a public appeal for any information on her daughter.
Heute Morgen ist meine Tochter Janine Kolog.
This morning, my daughter, who is a German citizen, was abducted with a tourist group in the south of Israel by Palestinian Hamas. We were sent a video in which I clearly recognized my daughter unconscious in a car with the Palestinians who drove along the Gaza Strip. I am asking for any news or help to please be sent to us. Thank you.
Jede Neuigkeiten bitte zu uns schicken. Vielen Dank.
Another sample of the Hamas brutality at the rave party is what happened to a young Israeli student. This is 25-year-old Noah, who was abducted from the rave party by Hamas terrorists. Noah is taken away on a bike by armed men, and she's seen sobbing and crying, asking her boyfriend to help her. But her boyfriend watches helplessly as she's taken away, held back, and reportedly was tortured too. The young student's family has released this video hoping to get any information on her whereabouts. But so far, there's been little news that's reached them. This is the plight of so many youngsters who were at the party. Some tortured and murdered, some still in the custody of Hamas terrorists, and efforts are on to ensure the safety of all abducted individuals. A woman abducted, blindfolded and shoved into a vehicle near Gaza. An Israeli family held hostage by Hamas terrorists in their own homes as their daughter was murdered in front of their eyes. The scale of atrocities and inhumane acts in Israel is still unraveling as horrifying videos give us a glimpse of the hostage crisis playing out. There are still countless people unaccounted for. Countless Israelis who remain in Hamas's custody. Bureau Report, India Today.
India Today's Rahul Kanwal spoke with General Secretary Palestinian National Initiative Mustafa Barghouti on Israel-Hamas war situation. Take a look.
I'm now joined on India Today for a Palestinian perspective by Mustafa Barghouti. He is the General Secretary of the Palestinian National Initiative known as the Al-Mubadara. Previously, he's been the Minister of Information in the Palestinian Unity Government, has been a member of the Palestinian Legislative Council since 2006 and a member of the Palestine Liberation Organization Central Council. Mustafa Barghouti, welcome to India Today. I want you to start by explaining to our viewers watching all across India why you think the Hamas chose to attack across Israel at this time, given the fact that they knew that the Israeli army's response would be massive and disproportionate. What do you think of the timing of this attack and the manner in which the Hamas has carried out this audacious assault on Israeli territory?
To understand that, it is very important to understand the context, and the context is that Palestinians have been displaced in acts of ethnic cleansing since 75 years, and we have been under Israeli military occupation since 1967, 56 years of occupation, and no perspective for freedom for Palestinians from this settler colonial system. In the last year, the Israeli settlers conducted terror attacks on Palestinians in the West Bank, killing 248 Palestinians, including 40 children. Meanwhile, the Israeli army attacked all Muslim and Christian sites, including Al-Aqsa Mosque, and Netanyahu appeared in the United Nations 2 weeks ago carrying a map of Israel that includes annexing the occupied West Bank and Gaza Strip and Jerusalem, as well as the Syrian Golan Heights. He challenged the whole world that he's going to annex the area, and Israel have had the most extreme government in its history, with fascist ministers like Smotrich and Ben Gvir. Hamas understood that what we face today is no perspective for a solution, no perspective of ending occupation, and no perspective of stopping the Israeli massacres that are now continuing in Gaza Strip.
But the fact is, Mustafa Barghouti, that there is absolutely no justification for terror. That's the global view now. No matter what the fact is that the world's support and sympathy at this time largely with Israel, and there is all manner of havoc being wreaked all across Gaza, including innocents being impacted because of this terror attack by the Hamas.
No innocent person should be attacked. No innocent person should be hit, whether Palestinian or Israeli. But if you compare the figures, you can discover that the people who were subjected to terror all these years are the Palestinians.
The Israel-Palestine war is only escalating. Over 1,300 have been killed and lost their lives in the ghastly war that broke out on Saturday after hundreds of Hamas terrorists invaded cities of Israel. Meanwhile, questions around how Israel failed to intercept such a massive invasion have been raised. Here's a report that details down on how Hamas actually started preparing for the large-scale invasion months ago. Take a look.
With over 1,200 killed in the latest war between Hamas and Israel, several questions are being raised over Israel's intelligence failure. Israel, which has long prided itself on its ability to infiltrate and monitor Islamist groups, was indeed caught off guard by Hamas's sudden terror attack, according to sources cited by news agency Reuters. Hamas gave the impression that it wasn't ready for the war. The outfit convinced Israel it cared more about its economy and ensuring that workers remain in Gaza. Hamas's deception helped it prepare for this massive invasion. The terror group constructed a mock Israeli settlement in Gaza where they practiced military landing and trained to storm it. Hamas also made videos of their training drills. The mission's secrecy was maintained throughout. Fighters who were being trained did not know the exact purpose of their intense training. Many Hamas leaders too were unaware of the plans. Ignorant of the developments taking place on its border, Israel turned its focus away from Hamas as it pushed for a deal to normalize relations with Saudi Arabia. Convinced that Hamas did not have any plans of military adventure, Israel had also reduced the number of soldiers deployed around Gaza. This was exploited by the Hamas, who successfully duped Israel into believing that violence was a thing of the past. Bureau Report, India Today.
Israel-Hamas blood feud returns. All-out war engulfs West Asia.
Again, you hear another blast.
Fearless reportage and exclusive news breaks.
तो यहाँ से एक ground report दिखा रहा हूँ. किसी भी समय यहाँ कुछ भी हो सकता है.
India's biggest conflict reporters, live and exclusive.
You just heard those sounds of the blast. Is the real images. And look at the massive destruction.
West Asia war through India Today cameras.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNP Group company. You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNP Group company.
शिवसेना हमारी नेचुरल एलाय है, राष्ट्रवादी कांग्रेस ये हमारी पॉलिटिकल एलाय है।
इलीगल सरकार बैठी हुई है, वो सत्ता में जयते हैं। अगर सत्य बोलो तो डराते हैं, धमकाते हैं। ऐसे देश नहीं चलता है।
राष्ट्रपति शासन लगाने का आइडिया ही शरद पवार जी का था।
No question is going with me.
In 2022 June, the NCP MLAs, all 51, our desire at that time was to join a BJP-led government in Maharashtra.
All the allegations made against the NCP were politically motivated.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com. You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNP Group company.
With US President Joe Biden, who's expressed complete support and solidarity to Israel, we hear that warships are being also moved closer to the border. How do you think the world must respond? Should they sit back and watch, or is there some assistance, cooperation that should be given to Israel?
Well, any assistance that Israel demands with regard to weaponry or systems they might need is something which the U.S. Congress will support. But it's not clear whether the White House is really going to support Israel in extricating the Hamas terrorists, because it seems that Tony Blinken, Secretary of State, his greatest concern is the spread of this. This isn't just going to be limited to the Gaza Strip. After all, when we talk about paragliders, where were those paragliders trained? If they were trained inside the Islamic Republic of Iran, which seems likely, that raises the stakes a great deal. And so when I look at American naval ships going towards the Eastern Mediterranean, that can be just as much to deter Israeli aircraft for taking off towards Iran as it could be to protect Israel from other aircraft flying in.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNP Group company.
All right, we're bringing to you the top images of the Israel-Hamas war. Let's take a look now. Israel has fully launched a ground assault on Gaza. Israel intensified its bombardments of the Gaza Strip with airstrikes and artillery shelling, striking more than 1,000 targets. Israel's military continued its strikes against Gaza through Monday night. Here are some visuals of the night sky that have been lit up by flares and explosions. High-altitude footage released by the Israel Defense Forces, shared online by an open-source intelligence handle, Monday evening spotlighted devastating aerial strikes on Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Explosions and subsequent black smoke could be seen across the Gaza city skyline as Israel continues retaliatory airstrikes in response to attack by Hamas. Israeli military says it launched attacks in more than 200 locations in the Gaza Strip overnight, including the Rimmel neighborhood in Gaza City. Fires and damaged buildings can be seen in the Jabalia refugee camp located in the north of the Gaza Strip following an Israeli strike in this area. By Palestinians evacuated injured at Jabalia refugee camp after Israeli airstrike after retaliatory strikes were launched against Hamas. Gaza's health ministry said there were dozens of Palestinians killed and wounded in Israeli airstrikes on the Jabalia refugee camp. More than 600 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli bombardment. Dozens of Israeli Air Force fighter jets attacked targets around the Al-Furqan neighborhood that serves as a terror nest for Hamas and from where many activities against Israel are carried out. Israeli military soldiers and tanks are seen deployed in the area near the Israeli borders with Lebanon, amid fears that fighting could escalate into a larger regional conflict. Dashcam footage shows Hamas terrorists executed people in a bomb shelter, shooting people who tried to run away. They threw a grenade to finish off those who were hiding. Israeli defense forces are continuing to bombard Gaza Strip in retaliation from the sea and the air. At least 687 Palestinians have been killed, 3,726 wounded in Israeli airstrikes since Saturday. Israel police and border police officers neutralized two armed terrorists outside of the Netivot on Saturday. Israeli police asserts they will continue working on the front lines to defend Israelis from terror. Shocking GoPro video taken from a Hamas terrorist surfaces. He can be seen casually entering an Israeli home after killing their dog, having juice and then setting the house on fire.
تغير بوتي
Former TV series star Lior Raz caught in rocket attack in Israel. He was volunteering to help and rescue local families in the area and was seen taking shelter behind a ball as rockets explode in the sky. Explosions and subsequent black smoke could be seen across the Gaza skyline as Israel continues retaliatory airstrikes in response to attack by Hamas. Israeli airstrikes in Gaza destroyed Hamas offices and terror training camps along with houses and other buildings. Rescue operations continue. Hamas military wing showed in a new video its air defense system preparing for the war. Hamas says it launched the air-to-surface rockets against Israeli warplanes. Israeli defense forces have bombed a Hezbollah observation post at the Lebanon border. Lebanon has been heavily guarded by Israeli military. Palestinians carried out funeral processions for a man killed as Israel continued its counter-attack. Palestinians were seen holding flags and chanting slogans as the procession moved forward. Former porn star Mia Khalifa has sparked an outrage. Mia Khalifa is being widely trolled for her insensitive take on the ongoing war between Israel and Palestine. In one of the posts that she put out on Twitter, or X, Khalifa called Israel an apartheid state. She drew additional criticism when she mocked the plight of women and children who were being tortured and recorded. Mia's advised to flip their phones and filmed horizontally has led to widespread condemnation. As a result, Khalifa has been fired from a podcast deal with Canada-based podcaster and radio host Todd Shapiro. Even Playboy magazine has now cut ties with the porn star and content creator, calling her comments reprehensible, to which Mia again mocked the plight of Israelis, saying she was only doing a bit to ensure that there are videos, 4,000 videos. Mia Khalifa didn't stop there. She also blasted Kylie Jenner for her pro-Israel post and said that the latter deleted hours after she was trolled. Jenner had reshared a non-profit organization's post that featured a picture of the Israeli flag with the caption, "Now and always, we stand with the people of Israel." Conflict is not new to the Middle East. For over 3,000 years, this patch of land has seen great armies march through it, and the land has been attacked. It has been conquered and partitioned and fought over by some of the greatest kings and emperors and generals around the world has ever known. These are known as the Holy Land. Since the 20th century, it has been the object of conflicting claims of Jewish and Arab national movements, leading to the century-long cycle of bloodshed, one that still continues to this day.
Conflict is not new to Palestine. For over 3,000 years, this patch of land has seen great armies march through it. The land has been attacked, it has been conquered and partitioned and fought over by some of the greatest kings and emperors and generals that the world has ever seen. The region is also the cradle from where rose the Abrahamic religions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Known as the Holy Land, since the 20th century, it has been the object of conflicting claims of Jewish and Arab national movements, leading to the century-long cycle of bloodshed in this ancient land of religion and faith, one that still continues to this day. The name Palestine comes from it being the land of the Philistines, a definition dating back to the 12th century BCE, when the Greeks held some land here. 1,000 years later, the Romans used it when their empire stretched into what is modern-day Syria. The name Palestine fell out of official use for another 2,000 years, though by this time it had entered Arabic since the advent of Islam. Now next, in 1918, when the Ottoman Empire collapsed after the First World War and Britain had the mandate over the land, they brought Palestine back into use, the term, as separate from their adjoining territory of Jordan, Transjordan they called it. By this time, there was already conflict brewing amongst those who lived here, between Arab and Jew. The cat had been let into the bag when over a century ago from this time, Napoleon had offered the region as a homeland for the persecuted Jews of Europe. It was an idea that needed time to brew, an idea that the British used to gain trust and support in the war against the Ottomans. Britain promised a Jewish national home on Arab land. Palestine had become a distinct political entity for the first time in centuries. This created challenges for Palestinian Arabs and Jews alike, because both realized that when the British left, the region's future would be determined by the size of the population and the ownership of land. Jewish immigration was constant, but still the balance remained very heavily skewed in favor of the Arab population and ownership. Then came another world war, and as Hitler occupied Europe and began systematically killing Jews, Palestine once again became the promised land where shiploads of Jewish refugees began arriving. By the end of the war, the race was on to secure a Jewish nation on the shores of the Mediterranean. By the time, there were Jewish militias that had been formed, and the Arabs had also started to arm themselves in self-defense. In 1947, the United Nations adopted a partition plan for Palestine, known as Resolution 181. This, the Arabs of Palestine rejected outright. A civil war had broken out across Palestine, and the British were desperate to get out. Despite all of this, the sovereign state of Israel came into being in May 1948, and immediately Israel was at war with its Arab neighbors, a war that Israel won. The territory of Palestine, as distinct from the state of Israel, was limited to the West Bank and Gaza, but that remained a thorn in the side of Israel. So when war erupted once again in 1967, Israel occupied what remained of Palestine in the West Bank and the strip of land in Gaza. In 1964, the Palestine Liberation Organization, PLO, had been formed in Cairo. And under the leadership of Yasser Arafat, PLO took up the challenge to wage constant war against the state of Israel. For the next 2.5 decades, PLO continued a bloody insurrection against Israel. Till finally, in 1987, Yasser Arafat and the PLO accepted the UN resolution and recognized the state of Israel. Matters improved and seemed to be on the mend, but it was short-lived. By 2002, the region was again in terrible conflict. The second intifada, or uprising, had begun. In 2007, Israel imposed a blockade in Gaza. In 2008, Israel sent in its army into the Strip. A peace was brokered that lasted a mere 4 years. Israel once again attacked Gaza in 2012 and again in 2014, when bombs rained down on Gaza. A ceasefire was finally declared in August 2014.
These are pictures, in fact, coming in from different parts, essentially, as far as Israel offensive against Gaza is concerned. Also pictures of hostages that have been taken by Hamas terrorists. They threaten that they will continue to execute many of these hostages, including men, women and children. Israel continues to be a top focus story right here. Remember, Gaurav Sawant and Ashutosh Mishra, my colleagues, are reporting from ground zero, getting us up to speed with every single development from this region. For the moment, it's time for a quick commercial break. Your news continues in just a bit.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNP Group company. You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNP Group company.
Weather forecast now. Delhi, maximum 33 and minimum 28 degrees. Mumbai, maximum 30 and minimum 26 degrees. Kolkata, maximum 34 and minimum 25 degrees. Bangalore, maximum 28 and minimum 22 degrees. Chennai, maximum 31 and minimum 27 degrees. Hyderabad, maximum 31 and minimum 23 degrees.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com.
Now,
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest Be Sustainable Change, a B&P Group company.
weather forecast now. Delhi, maximum 33 and minimum 28 degrees. Mumbai, maximum 30 and minimum 26 degrees. Kolkata, maximum 34 and minimum 25 degrees. Bangalore, maximum 28 and minimum 22 degrees. Chennai, maximum 31 and minimum 27 degrees. Hyderabad, maximum 31 and minimum 23 degrees.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com. You are watching India Today, powered by Finest Be Sustainable Change, a B&P Group company.
Very good afternoon. You're watching India Today, our rolling coverage on the Israel-Palestinian war. It's entered day 4. Over 900 killed in Israel alone. I'm going to take you through all the angles and the updates. The headlines first. Israel death toll mounts to 900. Israel asks its citizens to prepare safe rooms, warns Gaza with use of enormous force.
Israel is at war. We didn't want this war. It was forced upon us in the most brutal and savage way.
Hamas threatens to kill hostages, says no negotiations with Israel over hostages till they stop attacks on Gaza. Global support pouring in for Israel. France, Canada, US backing Israel amid the war. Trudeau condemns glorification of this violence. Macron says Hamas has no justification or legitimacy. A moment of attack on Israel music festival that's caught on cameras. Armed Hamas terrorists swooped in on the festival. 260 young party goers butchered, all left right in the party venue by the Hamas militants. And amid massive humanitarian crisis that's looming in Israel and Palestine, India Today reports from the crossfire, only Indian crew in the battle epicenter.
Just left our equipment and ran for safety. As of now, that rocket has been intercepted, no damage on ground, no loss of property.
All right, let me cut across to this big breaking news coming in as there is counter strike by Israel for day 4. We hear that nearly 1,500 bodies of Hamas terrorists all found across parts of Israel where they infiltrated. Big escalation is in the Israel-Palestine war. Hamas rockets and their firing continues on Israel. Terror, revenge and bodies all piling up. We see that this is a moment when Hamas has managed to take into custody a good number of Israelis. They've been held hostage. Hamas has said until Israel stops firing, they are not going to let those hostages free. And while that's said, they continue to fire rockets from their hideouts in Gaza Strip. Now, information coming in while this crossfire continues, at least 1,500 terrorists' bodies have been found all across Israel as Israel has stepped up their counter-strike. Huge development as we know that nearly 1,200 people in total in Palestine as well as in Israel have lost their lives owing to this war that's now entered day 4. Let me bring in Lorraine Isaacs, Israeli journalist, who's joining us live from Jerusalem. Lorraine, thank you very much again for speaking to India Today. You've been passionately tracking what's happening in Israel and the death toll on both ends are only mounting. It's unfortunate that this is the situation we see on day 4, where on both ends firing continues, rockets continue, attacks continue. And in the latest, we hear that Hamas has managed to keep a bunch of the Israeli soldiers as well as civilians hostage, will not release them until Israel stops firing. Is that right?
Yes, thank you for having me today. I'm standing here in Jerusalem. Before I answer about the update, I just want to show you behind me. I'm standing in one of the most popular squares in Jerusalem, the main area right near City Hall. And as you can see, it is dead quiet. Absolutely no one out on the streets except for police, really. We don't see any soldiers because all the soldiers are on the front lines, but we see a lot of police out and only people who absolutely have to be. The whole city is basically come to a standstill, the whole country. Now, with regard to what's going on here in Israel, thank God Israel has been doing airstrike attacks against Gaza all last night. And we have found, as you said, 1,500 dead terrorist bodies here in Israel, meaning 1,500 Hamas terrorists infiltrated and they've been killed thus far. We don't know how many more. It's still an uncertain number, but it's a good news that we are finding and killing the terrorists on Israeli soil right now.
We hear that the Israeli chief, Netanyahu, has said very clearly, you started the war, we will finish it. This is a warning that's gone out to Hamas. We believe that many areas that they've laid siege to in Gaza. So Israel really stepping up its attack, and we know that you have sufficient ammunition. You've got help in terms of military, even from the United States. So this is an attack that you want to take to a logical end. But what, according to you, is the logical end here?
The only logical end that I can see that most of the Israeli population agree with is the absolute annihilation and decimation of Hamas. They must be dismantled. They must be killed. They must have no ability to recover from this and ever do this again to Israel. There's no other option. This is what happens when you live right next door to a terrorist entity, especially for so many years. They watch you, they learn from you, and they bide their time, and they wait for a moment to attack your country where they can attack as many civilians and slaughter as many men, women, and children as possible. And we can never allow this to happen again. You cannot live peacefully next to a genocidal nation who only wants to brutalize, murder, rape, and destroy your people. They must be destroyed in their entirety.
Well, as we also see things unfolding, we know that you have a lot of support coming in from the Western world. Apart from the United States, there's an official joint statement that's come in from United Kingdom, from Germany, France, Italy, collectively giving out a statement that they stand with Israel. How does Israel receive this? Is there any more that you want from these countries apart from just their support?
First of all, thank God. We are very, very grateful for the support, especially around the world, in the Western world, all our allies in India, in Canada, in America, in Italy, in Germany. We're very grateful for all our allies who are standing up and disavowing the Hamas brutality and the terrorist attacks. We are very grateful. Now, there are only two sides of this war. There's right and there's wrong. It's black and white. There's human lives on one side, on the Israel side, and then there's brutalization and massacre and genocide and terrorism on the Hamas side. So if you don't stand with Israel, you stand with terrorism. There are only two sides. There are no other ways about it. We very much appreciate all the support here in Israel, and hopefully we will be getting some physical support, that is monetary support, weaponry support, air support as well from our allies. But right now we are very, very grateful for all the support and sympathy we are receiving from around the world.
All right. Do stay with us, Lauren, if you could. I'm also going to cut across to Joseph Rosnen, former senior policymaker at the Israeli National Security Council. Joseph, thank you very much for speaking to us. I can't help but ask, and this is exactly what the world is asking on social media platforms, and how did Israel not detect such a large-scale coordinated attacks on the country? And you know you have a volatile neighbor. You know very well the areas of West Bank and Gaza Strip have located their militants who are gearing up for any given opportunity to war with Israel. How did you not see this coming?
First of all, thank you for having me. And I also want to thank for the heartwarming support from India and other countries. I really appreciate it. Regarding the intelligence, there's no way to go around it. There was a huge failure. But it's not that we were blind to reality. We knew for a very long time that Iran is sponsoring and arming Hamas terror organization. And we have to make it clear. Hamas, I say different reports calling Hamas militants or freedom fighters. We have to be clear. They are terrorists. Hamas equals ISIS. Hamas is ISIS. And we have to be also very decisive with our reaction. Regarding the intelligence, as I said, we knew what's going on for many years. There is always a gap between the raw material we have and how we interpret to decision making and actions on the ground. And that was one of the biggest failures in this incident, in this tragic barbaric attacks. But please, I want to say that this is not the time for making any conclusions or blaming games against the Israeli government. We in Israel, from left and right, we are all united. And on a personal note, yesterday I went to donate blood in Jerusalem. There were thousands of Israelis coming to donate, religious people, secular, from the left, from the right. We all united in one cause, in one cause to destroy Hamas. And in my opinion, there's no other way but the utter destruction of Hamas. There is no way to buy quiet or peace from this murderous terror
Right. You know,
organization.
Joseph, as a last question to you on, do you believe that you're going to fully decimate Hamas forces along the Gaza Strip area? They've been fully funded. They're fully loaded. They've held Israelis hostages. It's going to be a long-drawn battle because they don't seem like they want to let go. They're barbaric. They're jihadis. They don't mind dying along with the Israelis that they've taken into custody.
Yeah, we are facing a situation that we've never faced. And this is why we have to create a new playbook. I would say that our action against Hamas shouldn't be limited only to Gaza. We have to make sure that also the leadership of Hamas outside Gaza, wherever they are hiding, they have to be sure that the time is limited, and our long arm will reach them wherever they are. The same has happened with the capture of Eichmann, because again, Hamas and their barbaric actions equals ISIS and I would say even the Nazis.
All right. Joseph, really our hearts going out to all the families that are currently grieving. It is difficult times for people across the world to watch what's happening. This is a humanitarian crisis and it needs to stop. Lauren and Joseph, appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Now, Israel-Palestine war that's entered day 4. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has vowed to launch a massive attack on Hamas with unprecedented intensity, while Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has called on the UN to mediate and prevent this humanitarian crisis from happening. Remember, there are casualties on both sides. As Israeli Defense Force Minister orders complete siege on Gaza Strip with no electricity, food or fuel, Israeli Defense Forces now began the ground invasion of Gaza. Israel's military relentlessly pounded Gaza Strip, hitting more than 500 of the targets, the hideouts of Hamas, and those areas where Hamas has parked themselves to fire at parts of Israel. In fact, clashes in Israel rage on as Hamas fighters still hold out. The death toll in Israel has now risen to 900, with nearly 2,600 people injured. Rockets continue to rain on the sky of Escalates in southern part of Israel, where India Today's correspondent, the only reporter on ground, the epicenter from India. In fact, the dash cam footage of the Supernova Music Festival. That was another heartbreaking image that came in, showing how the festival panned out to be really, really fatal for all those who arrived to party and enjoy their way through. 260 bodies were left abandoned, all killed, young girls and boys who were there, revelers enjoying their time. They were abducted, tortured, kidnapped, and many of them left to die right at the festival venue.
Israel, again, is using both its intelligence network, its electronic intelligence, its signal intelligence apparatus, and its assets on ground. At least that's the information we've been able to glean to figure out where the hostages are. And very clearly, at least on ground, we are being told that those numbers are not in dozens. They are much, much higher. The apprehension is while they were taken in, the hostages, they've not been kept in any one location. They've been spread out. They've been split up. Families have been split up, and apparently they've been kept in a maze of tunnels along the Gaza Strip. Some of these tunnels have been exploited by Hamas terrorists in the past to carry out terrorist attacks into Israel. And it's a very complex maze of tunnels, we are told. Now, in that complex maze of tunnels, these hostages could have been kept. How do you rescue them? If more soldiers go in, the Hamas terrorists could have rigged those tunnels with explosives. They could detonate those explosives. And not just the hostages, but even the rescue teams could be, in the line of fire and in grave danger. So these are some of the huge challenges that the Israeli defense forces, the Israeli security forces face. There have just been aerial attacks and rocket and missile attacks that have happened. Ground troops are being amassed to be sent across. At the same time, there is an apprehension, as Hamas says, if there are more aerial attacks, each day they will take out one hostage. They will kill one hostage, and on live television. This is exactly like what the Islamic State terrorists used to do. If Hamas is doing the same or threatening to do the same, executing people on live television, because like the Islamic State, they've also been using GoPro cameras to shoot their killings inside Israeli territory, and they were not taking on combatants in every situation. They were also killing innocent civilians, the elderly women, the young children, toddlers were killed. In all of this, Israel says Hamas is no different than the Daesh, than the Islamic State terrorists.
Right now, I am here in Jerusalem city center. I'm inside a bomb shelter, and this is the siren right now in the city center of Jerusalem. Take a look. We have just witnessed a siren, and you can hear the booms and the thumps. Of rockets falling. I'm right here in the city center of Jerusalem.
In fighting Hamas, Israel is not only fighting for its own people, it is fighting for every country that stands against barbarism. Israel will win this war. And when Israel wins, the entire civilized world wins. Israel is at war. We didn't want this war. It was forced upon us in the most brutal and savage way. But though Israel didn't start this war, Israel will finish it. Once the Jewish people were stateless. Once the Jewish people were defenseless. No longer. Hamas will understand that by attacking us, they've made a mistake of historic proportions. We will exact a price that will be remembered by them and Israel's other enemies for decades to come. The savage attacks that Hamas perpetrated against innocent Israelis are mind-boggling, slaughtering families in their homes, massacring hundreds of young people at an outdoor festival, kidnapping scores of women, children, and elderly, even Holocaust survivors. Hamas terrorists bound, burned, and executed children. They are savages. Hamas is ISIS. And just as the forces of civilizations united to defeat ISIS, the forces of civilization must support Israel in defeating Hamas.
I want to assure you that we will defeat terror because we have no other choice. We have no other choice. There are many Israeli and also others from different nationalities which held in hostage. We are committed to bring them back in the spirit of mutual responsibility. We demand the Hamas not to harm any of the hostages. Their safety is their responsibility.
יש לנו איזה 15-10 שניות לרוץ לממ"ד. שמענו אזעקה, ישר תוך 3 שניות אני קמתי מהמיטה. לקחנו את כולם לממ"ד, את אחי קטן בן 1.5 שנה, כולם בסטרס. פתאום אחרי חצי דקה שאנחנו כבר בממ"ד ושומעים בלי הפסקת טילים, שומעים בום, כל הבית רעד. בנס לא קרה כלום לנפשות, אבל כל המרפסת הלכה.
Hamas launched an unprovoked attack against Israel. They fired thousands of rockets at towns and cities, invaded southern Israel, kidnapped civilians, murdered men, women and children. This is the evil that Israel faces. Inhuman actions, unspeakable horrors. Today has been a dark and difficult day in Israel. The fight will be long and it will be difficult, but we will win. We will stand united and we will win. The entire world must stand shoulder to shoulder with Israel as we defend ourselves from terror.
Now, the war between Israel and Palestine is turning grimmer with each passing day. Even Israel's counter-strikes at Gaza are far from over. Hamas has announced that it will begin execution and live televised killings of Israeli hostages for every building bombarded in Gaza. This is their response to the counter-attack by Israel. Hamas says no negotiations on Israeli captives under fire. Regime must pay a high price. Hamas says that the ongoing operation against Israel will continue while rejecting any negotiations on Israeli captives as long as the regime's attacks on the besieged Gaza Strip continue. Meanwhile, hundreds of Israeli citizens are being held hostage by Hamas. As per reports, the latest information is about the abduction of a woman, Doron, and her 2 daughters. Another girl, Noah, who was enjoying a party while she was kidnapped, and still no information about her or her boyfriend that we see on our screens.
From this moment, we announce that for every attack towards our people who are safe in their homes without prior warning, unfortunately, we have to execute one of the civilian enemy captives that we have hostage. And we will be forced to broadcast this in video and audio. We announce this decision and we hold the responsibility in front of the whole world to the Zionist enemy and its leadership that they are responsible for this decision.
Hamas has gone on a merciless abduction spree, torture, killing in the last 4 days across Israel. Harrowing accounts emerge of attacks and tortures. I'm going to take you through this quick report that India Today has compiled.
Running for their lives while being chased by heavily armed Hamas militants. Peppered with gunfire everywhere they turn, they rush to hide in nearby bushes, but they're no match for the terrorists. At least 260 bodies have now been recovered at the Supernova Music Festival in southern Israel, and the death toll is expected to rise as teams of paramedics continue to clear the site. On the road out of the festival, there are destroyed cars everywhere. Most of their owners are dead, but others have been taken. Hamas gunmen celebrated the capture of one of the festival goers, Shani Luke, after they kidnapped her from the crowd. Those images are too distressing to show.
We were sent a video in which I could clearly see our daughter unconscious with the Palestinians and them driving around the Gaza Strip. I ask you to send us any help or news.
25-year-old Noah Argamani and her boyfriend Avi Natan were also taken hostage at the festival and are thought to be in Gaza.
I asked to see the video and then I saw that it was definitely her. She was so scared, so frightened. I always protected her, and at this very moment I couldn't.
The Israeli government posted this video to social media saying an Israeli child was executed in front of her siblings and parents, who are currently being held hostage by Hamas. Yoni Asher's family were taken, his wife Doron and their 2 children, just 5 and 2 years old. She managed to phone him to say Hamas gunmen were inside the house before the call was cut off. The next time he saw them, they were on video circulated on social media.
I want to ask of Hamas, don't hurt little children, don't hurt women. If you want me instead, I'm willing to come.
All over Israel, the families of the missing are looking for answers. At police stations, people are coming to give DNA samples so their loved ones can be identified. Inbal Albini's brother Daniel is dead and her father Chaim is missing after being kidnapped from his kibbutz. She says Israel's military failed to protect them.
What took them so long?
That's a mystery, because they left all the people in the kibbutzim all alone for hours.
This is one of the sites where Hamas's rockets came down in the weekend attack. Israel's Iron Dome air defence system was overwhelmed by the sheer number of them. So while Israel's bombing of Gaza is about revenge, it's also about destroying Hamas's ability to launch another attack that's anywhere close to this scale. Israeli warplanes continue to bomb the Gaza Strip, targeting what the government says are Hamas operatives and infrastructure. But civilians are paying a heavy cost. People in residential buildings normally get warnings from Israel to get out before they're struck. The people in this refugee camp say they weren't told in advance.
Without warning, they hit us without any warning.
More than 2 days on from the unprecedented attack out of Gaza, the military is still hunting armed terrorists hiding in Israel itself. The IDF says it's brought in special forces to try to regain control. With a clear declaration of war by Israel, a ground assault into Gaza could be next, as the Israeli military builds up a massive show of strength along the border.
Israel-Hamas blood feud returns. All-out war engulfs West Asia.
Again you hear another blast.
Fearless reportage and exclusive news breaks.
तो यहाँ से एक ground report दिखा रहा हूँ. किसी भी समय यहाँ कुछ भी हो सकता है.
India's biggest conflict reporters, live and exclusive.
You just heard those sounds of the blast. Is the real images. When look at the massive destruction.
West Asia war through India Today cameras.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest Be Sustainable Change, a BNP Group company.
शिवसेना हमारी नेचुरल एलाय है, राष्ट्रवादी कांग्रेस ये हमारी पॉलिटिकल एलाय है.
इलीगल सरकार बैठी हुई है, वो सत्ता में विजयते हैं. अगर सत्य बोलो तो डराते हैं, धमकाते हैं. ऐसे देश नहीं चलता है.
राष्ट्रपति शासन लगाने का आइडिया ही शरद पवार जी का था.
No question is going with BJP.
In 2022 June, the NCP MLAs, all 51, our desire at that time was to join a BJP-led government in Maharashtra.
All the allegations made against the NCP were politically motivated.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com. You are watching India Today, Powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a B&P Group company.
This video from Muzaffarpur in Bihar has sparked outrage on the internet. The viral video shows 3 policemen dumping a dead body into a canal. Citizens took to social media in large numbers to criticize the Bihar police, calling the act disgusting and inhuman. The police, however, seemed to defend the action initially. Following the outrage, the body was taken out of the canal and is now kept at the morgue. The police driver and 2 home guards from the duty have been suspended.
इस वीडियो में दिख रहे तीनों पुलिसकर्मी को प्रथम दृष्टया दोषी पाते हुए इनके विरुद्ध कार्रवाई भी हमने गंभीरता से की है। चालक सिपाही को जो पुलिस का है उसको निलंबित कर दिया गया है।
Police are also proving the authenticity of the viral video. Bureau Report, India Today.
Israel-Hamas blood feud returns. All-out war engulfs West Asia.
Again, you hear another blast.
Fearless reportage and exclusive news breaks.
तो यहाँ से एक ground report दिखा रहा हूँ. किसी भी समय यहाँ कुछ भी हो सकता है.
India's biggest conflict reporters, live and exclusive.
You just heard those sounds of the blast. Is the real images. And look at the massive destruction.
West Asia war through India Today cameras.
You are watching India Today. Powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a B&P Group company.
War is back in the Middle East, and the biggest question on people's minds in India and globally, what happens next? How was the Hamas able to stage such an attack? To what extent will the Israelis go in their counter-offensive? Could this war now escalate? To talk about this and more, I'm joined on India Today live and exclusive at this time by one of the world's leading risk gurus. Joining us is Ian Bremmer, American political scientist, author, entrepreneur, founder, president of the Eurasia Group, and really one of the world's top experts on risk. Thank you very much, Ian, for joining us. I want you to start by explaining to our viewers, as best as you understand, how the Hamas was able to pull off an attack of this magnitude against one of the most sophisticated armed forces in the world, which has an intelligence service which is the envy of other countries. How could Hamas stage this attack? Why couldn't the Israelis stop it?
It's true. When you talk about Israel, not just their intelligence, their surveillance capabilities, their human capabilities on the ground in the occupied territories, also their border security, really it's considered the gold standard. But the Israelis took their eye off the ball. For the last 6 months, Israel has been consumed in a constitutional crisis. No one's been talking about the concerns of the Palestinians, certainly not in Gaza, certainly not Hamas. Instead, it was massive internal demonstrations, which included many members of the Israeli Defense Forces, some of whom said they wouldn't actually serve if the judicial reforms went ahead. Also, Prime Minister Netanyahu was himself focused on expanding settlements in the West Bank. And indeed, many battalions of the defense forces were sent to the West Bank and to the surrounding border areas, in part to help ensure stability given those settlements, and also to deal with the sometimes violent reprisals, demonstrations, attacks that had come from Palestinians in the occupied West Bank. In other words, there was very little focus on Gaza and Hamas. There was a feeling of confidence, even in the days before the attacks, from Israel's defense leaders that there was no war being planned, that Palestinians and Hamas were bottled up. This was not a priority. This was not a concern. Now, that combined with clearly an extraordinary amount of training on the part of these Hamas militants, this was something I would say they probably would have been planning for years, not just months. Those things combined really lead to unprecedented tragedy for the Israeli people.
Because some of these videos have actually been geolocated by our open source intelligence experts and others to areas just about 50 kilometers from the Israel border. So it's not as if they were out in a place where they couldn't be seen. Given the kind of capacity Israel has, it almost seems as if this is one of the biggest intelligence failures in decades that Israel has to deal with.
Yeah, it's pretty clear that, again, the presumption of the Israeli government was that the Palestinian issue didn't really matter. No one was focusing on a two-state solution. No one was focusing on negotiations. Netanyahu and his far-right coalition partners, their view was the Palestinians are no longer a fundamental threat. The Israelis have basically won. So indeed, they could take more territory for an expanding Israeli population in the West Bank. And the conditions for Palestinians, particularly in Gaza, were becoming worse and worse and worse. 50% absolute poverty, some 70% without access even to clean water. And in this environment, the necessity of the Israelis to be absolutely focused on national security, on the borders, on intelligence collection, you'd think that would be even more essential. But of course, Israel has been consumed with domestic challenges to their own democracy. So really, this is a case of a very sophisticated and well-resourced Israeli defense capability that has taken its eye off the ball. And certainly Prime Minister Netanyahu, his legacy now will be these attacks, the Hamas attacks.
The Israel Defense Forces have said that there will be a war with Hamas. What form and shape do you see that war take? We're already seeing heavy aerial fire, the Air Force artillery mortars being used. So far, Israel has held back from a ground offensive because that would cause a lot of devastation in the Gaza Strip, also death to Israeli armed personnel. Do you now think that is inevitable? And if there is a ground invasion, how is that likely to go?
I do think it's inevitable, but there are a few other things that are going on. You also have a siege that was announced a few hours ago by the Israeli defense minister. No more gas, no more food, no more water, nothing getting into Gaza going forward. Already a crippling poor territory. Remember, some 2.2 million Palestinians actually live in Gaza. You also have well over 100, possibly as many as 160, 170, I'm hearing, hostages that have been taken, Israeli civilian hostages that are in Gaza. And certainly the top priority for the Israeli Defense Forces right now will be to secure those hostages and get them back safely. That's an incredibly difficult thing to do. But beyond that, there will be ground strikes. There will be house-to-house warfare. There will be an effort by the Israelis to remove Hamas leadership, to kill them, to capture them, also to disarm Hamas militants. And that probably means a fairly long occupation, a very bloody occupation, one that will lead to enormous casualties for the Palestinians on the ground. The big question is whether this war expands beyond Israel and Gaza. to include the West Bank and also to include other countries. That has not.
So I'll come to that in just a moment. I want to stick for a moment just to the attack. Do you think, how much time do you think it might take for the IDF to be able to establish control on the Gaza Strip, given that it's a hostile population, many of whom will fight back? It's densely populated, and it won't be easy for Israel to occupy that area by force.
No. I mean, they're not going to establish full control. There's always going to be an insurgency. The question is, how much do the Israelis want to have a destruction of Hamas leadership as a singular goal, and how much do they want to ensure greater levels of direct occupation? I mean, I don't think they've made this decision yet, and perhaps they won't make the decision until they see how the military operations proceed. But certainly on the table as a potential outcome would be a permanent occupation of Gaza. I think that right now the Israelis are in trauma. They're shocked. I suspect that they're making more tactical decisions than they are thinking about what they're going to be facing in 3 months' time.
Let's now come to the question of escalation. We've seen some mortar firing by the Hezbollah, which saw Israeli artillery counteroffensive. Is the Hezbollah likely to get involved? Do you see this potentially spread even further to involve Iran?
So far, Hezbollah has been very cautious. Of course, the political statements completely support Hamas. But as you said, only some rocket attacks against a military facility, which the IDF responded to. That's it. So clearly right now, Hezbollah is saying this is Hamas's fight. Iran is saying they had nothing to do with it. They're saying this is Hamas's fight. Now, of course, Iran has been very publicly supportive of Hamas. Iran has provided military support for Hamas historically. But the United States government has said, as of a few hours ago, that there is no evidence, no hard evidence that the Iranians are directly involved. So clearly the Americans are telling the Israelis for now that there is no justification for escalating this war into Iran. The Americans also sending a fleet to the region to show Israel that the Americans have their back. So it's a warning to the Iranians, but it's also a warning to the Israelis. And I just, as of right now, there's pressure not to allow this war to escalate beyond Israel and Gaza.
The Saudis and the Israelis were working towards some kind of diplomatic engagement, talking about a potential deal. Is that deal now dead?
That deal is now dead. The Saudis demanded some level of support for the Palestinians in order to come to an agreement with the Israelis. This is the opposite of that, clearly. There's no way the Saudis would be able to come to this agreement. You're going to see big demonstrations on the Arab street against Israel as a consequence of this. There's been very little of that over the last few years. This will now become an urgent issue, and it will constrain the Saudis from making that deal. It will constrain the UAE and other countries that are working with Israel from getting closer to Israel. And the Saudis, I was speaking to Saudi officials even a week ago. They were quite optimistic that we were heading towards a deal in the coming months. That's now off the table.
So is it temporarily dead, buried, or permanently dead in your view?
Permanently is a long time. You know, the leadership of these countries, the Gulf states, have lots of reasons they'd like to cooperate with Israel. There are technological reasons, there are national security reasons, there are economic investment reasons. Those don't change overnight, but the political realities on the ground for these countries make this deal dead for the foreseeable future.
Given the disproportionate response from Israel, which is inevitable, what do you make of the timing of Hamas's strike? Obviously, everyone going into this attack knew that they'd be dead, that there would be very severe consequences, including on the civilian population. Why did Hamas choose this manner of attack and this magnitude of attack?
Well, I mean, the symbolism of the 50th anniversary of the 1973 war certainly is resonant, and I suspect that played into the decision-making to a degree. But more broadly, it's because Israel was in such a strong geopolitical position. It's because the friends of the Palestinians were leaving them behind. They were moving on to start working with Israel. They were living their own lives. And the Israeli government was a hard right-wing Israeli government, did not feel any pressure to deal with the Palestinian issue. In fact, they were only taking more settlements, taking more land that belongs to the Palestinians. It was a policy of subjugation, and the Americans and the Europeans were pushing Netanyahu to stop doing that. Netanyahu wasn't listening. So Hamas, which is an organization unlike the Palestinian Authority, which consistently calls for the utter destruction of Israel. Well, I mean, they weren't moving with the UAE or the Saudis. They weren't finding a way to do more with less. They were feeling increasingly isolated. So I do believe that there was a level of desperation on the part of Hamas that felt like they were losing on every front, losing in the Middle East, losing with the Israelis. And as a consequence, when you are in a corner, you're more likely to act irrationally. And I think that's precisely what Hamas's leadership has just done.
There are conspiracy theorists who think that because Benjamin Netanyahu wasn't the kind of domestic political trouble that he was, that he chose to look the other way so that the Hamas could pull off an attack of this magnitude, then he'd be able to get the domestic population to rally around the Israeli flag. How do you respond to or look at these conspiracy theories that say the reason for the incompetence is not actual incompetence, because we know that's not true, is because they chose to look the other way because they wanted something around which the Israeli people could coalesce?
I would say even addressing them on your show does a disservice to the program, and it's not worth airing them, frankly.
Sure, because nobody under any circumstances would want something like this to happen. But how is this likely to impact the political graph of Benjamin Netanyahu? There is talk about different political parties coming together and forming a unity consensus government around the issue of national security. And there are right-wing elements, extreme right-wing elements, who are part of the Netanyahu coalition. The other parties want them to break away. Will Netanyahu do that, according to you?
I think that there is likely to be a national emergency government to respond to this war effort, and that Benny Gantz, former defense minister, prime minister, is likely to join, perhaps Yair Lapid, the leader of the opposition. This certainly will bring all Israel together for the foreseeable future, with national security as the top priority, more important than the economy, more important than the constitutional crisis, which had been fomented by Netanyahu to past weeks and months. But this doesn't make life easier for Netanyahu long term. Let's be very clear. This happened on his watch. He's the one that is, responsible ultimately for the national security of the Israeli people, and he failed the Israeli people. And that's one of the reasons why a unity government is essential, to create the legitimacy for the war that is now going on, for the atrocities that will certainly be committed as a consequence of that. The Israeli people need to be fully together for what is going to be an existential fight for themselves. I mean, let's be clear. These are the worst atrocities that have been committed against Jews in the world since the Holocaust. And for a country of 10 million surrounded by enemies, this is something that the entire country will rally together in a way that is almost unimaginable for any other country on the planet.
Two last questions. 9/11 changed America. How is Israel likely to change on the back of what is being called Israel's 9/11?
Yeah, I referred to it as Israel's 9/11 immediately after it happened. Of course, it is that dramatic. But of course, the United States overreacted for 9/11, overreacted on the ground in ways that made it harder for the U.S. to function as a transparent representative democracy, stripped away a lot of people's rights. Also overreacted internationally in wars in Iraq and Afghanistan that cost trillions of dollars, and more important, millions and millions of lives destroyed as a consequence of that, still being felt more than 20 years after. One would hope that Netanyahu and a unity government, assuming we see that, will learn some of the lessons that the Americans did not from the war on terror.
What does this attack mean for the Palestinian cause? There hasn't been much negotiation, dialogue, diplomacy between the Israelis and the Palestinians of late. Does this resurrect the idea of a two-nation solution, or do you think that's already dead and buried? This will be buried even deeper now?
I don't know how you get to a two-state solution. We know how problematic that's been historically, and there's only far more settlers that are right now on the West Bank. It becomes harder to do every day that passes. But let's be clear, no one thought they had to deal with the Palestinian issue anymore, not in Israel, not in the Middle East, not in the United States. The Palestinian issue is now back to the top of the regional agenda, at least for the near-term future, and a lot of countries around the world, including Israel, are going to have to grapple with what that means.
Finally, how does this impact other world powers? The United States, India, China, all of them coming out strongly in support of the Israeli nation at this moment. But how does this impact, for example, America's strategy in the Middle East?
China didn't come out strongly in favor of the Israelis. In fact, at the Security Council meeting, the Chinese blamed the Israelis for the antecedent conditions that allowed this to happen. They did condemn the Palestinian attacks, of course. The Russians did not even condemn the attacks. I mean, look, there still is a lot of division around the world. I do believe that the nature of these attacks led to very widespread condemnation, including your own India. But long term, as this war grinds on, as it costs more and more lives, I think that you're going to see much greater polarization both around the world and eventually also in Israel. And that's something to watch too.
Ian Bremmer, you're terribly squeezed for time, for finding a short window for India today. Thank you very much. Deeply appreciate your insights. Thank you, sir.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNP Group company.
Seen in Israel over the past 36 hours are truly horrifying. I want to express my absolute solidarity for the people of Israel. Now is not a time for equivocation, and I'm unequivocal. Hamas and the people who support Hamas are fully responsible for this appalling act of terror, for the murder of civilians and for the kidnapping of innocent people, including children. I've just spoken with Prime Minister Netanyahu to assure him of the UK's steadfast support as Israel defends itself against these appalling attacks. We will do everything that we can to help. Terrorism will not prevail.
This is the worst attack on Israel since 1973, the Yom Kippur War, almost exactly 50 years ago. But there's a fundamental difference. That was a war that was state to state, country to country, army to army. This is a massive terrorist attack that is gunning down Israeli civilians in their towns, in their homes, and as we've seen so graphically, literally dragging people across the border with Gaza, including a Holocaust survivor in a wheelchair, women and children. So you can imagine the impact this is having throughout Israel, and the world should be revolted at what it's seen.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNP Group company.
Weather forecast now. Delhi, maximum 33 and minimum 28 degrees. Mumbai, maximum 30 and minimum 26 degrees. Kolkata, maximum 34 and minimum 25 degrees. Bangalore, maximum 28 and minimum 22 degrees. Chennai, maximum 31 and minimum 27 degrees. Hyderabad, maximum 31 and minimum 23 degrees.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com.
Israel-Hamas blood feud returns. All-out war engulfs West Asia.
Again you hear another blast.
Fearless reportage and exclusive news breaks.
तो यहाँ से ये ground report दिखा रहा हूँ. इसी भी समय यहाँ कुछ भी हो सकता है.
India's biggest conflict reporters, live and exclusive.
You just heard those sounds of the blast. Is the real images. Look at the massive destruction.
West Asia war through India Today cameras.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest Be Sustainable Change, a BNP Group company.
Good afternoon, you're watching India Today. We're on a rolling coverage on the Israel-Palestine war. So far, we hear Israelis, 900 of them who've died right when the war started 4 days ago. On the Palestinian end, nearly 700 people have died. The casualties are only mounting, with Israel now issuing a total blockade along the Gaza Strip as they bombard the Gaza region. Well, the Israel government, the administration, has decided that they want to completely wipe off the Hamas militants right from the face of the earth. They have come back, and how? I'm going to take you through all the details with our reporters on ground, Gaurav Sawant and Ashutosh, who are bringing us every angle and accurate update from the war-torn zone. The headlines first. As Israel death toll mounts to 900, Israeli government vows to fight back. Big escalation in the Israel-Palestine war. Bodies of nearly 1,500 terrorists found on Israel's soil as Israel fights back.
Is it war? We didn't want this war. It was forced upon us in the most brutal and savage way.
Hamas threatens to kill hostages, says no negotiations with Israel over hostages until they stop attacks on Gaza. Global support pours in for Israel. France, Canada, United States and United Kingdom backing Israel amid the war. Trudeau condemns the glorification of violence as Macron says Hamas has no justification or legitimacy. Moment of the attack on Israel music festival caught on cameras. Armed Hamas terrorists swoop on the fest. 260 young partygoers butchered by Hamas. Amid the massive humanitarian crisis looming in Israel and Palestine, India Today reports from the crossfire. Gaurav Sawant, Ashutosh, who reports from that war-torn zone.
Our equipment and ran for safety. As of now, that rocket has been intercepted. No damage on ground, no loss of property.
All right, here's the big news coming in as Israel has managed to recapture control of the Gaza border, the fence that was breached by Palestinian Hamas gunmen who carried out a weekend's mass incursion. In fact, this happened on Saturday, wee hours of Saturday, right in the morning. They have managed to breach the border areas with much ease. Those fences that were not guarded, they used bulldozers and all kinds of heavy vehicles to breach through those borders. Israel now finally has retaken control of the Gaza border fence that was breached by the Hamas terrorists early Saturday morning and is now planting mines in parts where barriers were toppled. This is Israel's way of countering Hamas terrorists. As you know, there were coordinated attacks all on land, on air and through water. A multi-pronged attack by Hamas terrorists, and most of those fences that they managed to breach with great ease, Israel has now managed to recapture those areas, the border areas along Gaza and Israel, and they've also planted mines in those parts where the barriers were toppled. There is no sparing Hamas terrorists at this point. Israel has managed to counter-attack, and how? It's been now 4 days, ever since the war. Of course, they were taken on a back foot, but they came back with great ammunition and strength, have managed to neutralize nearly 1,500 terrorists. And those bodies have been found across parts of Israel where Hamas attacked. Now, Gaurav Sawant is joining us with a lot of details. What's happening on ground in Israel? Gaurav, we saw you being caught in the crossfire. It is a tense situation on ground. Israel is really stepping up their attack, and we believe 2 Palestinian journalists have also been killed along the Gaza border as the death toll on the Gaza side has reached up to 700. How is Israel responding? With what might? If you could explain.
Israel, again, is using both its intelligence network, its electronic intelligence, its signal intelligence apparatus and its assets on ground. At least that's the information we've been able to glean to figure out where the hostages are. And very clearly, at least on ground, we are being told that those numbers are not in dozens. They are much, much higher. The apprehension is while they were taken in, the hostages, they've not been kept in any one location. They've been spread out. They've been split up. Families have been split up, and apparently they've been kept in a maze of tunnels along the Gaza Strip. Some of these tunnels have been exploited by Hamas terrorists in the past to carry out terrorist attacks into Israel. And it's a very complex maze of tunnels, we are told. Now, in that complex maze of tunnels, these hostages could have been kept. How do you rescue them? If more soldiers go in, the Hamas terrorists could have rigged those tunnels with explosives. They could detonate those explosives. And not just the hostages, but even the rescue teams could be, in the line of fire and in grave danger. So these are some of the huge challenges that the Israeli defense forces, the Israeli security forces face. There have just been aerial attacks and rocket and missile attacks that have happened. Ground troops are being amassed to be sent across. At the same time, there is an apprehension as as Hamas says, if there are more aerial attacks, each day they will take out one hostage. They will kill one hostage, and on live television. This is exactly like what the Islamic State terrorists used to do. If Hamas is doing the same or threatening to do the same, executing people on live television, because like the Islamic State, they've also been using GoPro cameras to shoot their killings inside Israeli territory, and they were not taking on combatants in every situation. They were also killing innocent civilians, the elderly women, the young children, toddlers were killed. In all of this, Israel says Hamas is no different than the Daesh, than the Islamic State terrorists.
Now, Gaurav Sawant, who's been reporting for us non-stop, a rolling coverage coming in from that war-torn zone, was in Israel's Ashkelon a little earlier, where air raid sirens continued to ring amid Hamas rocket attacks. Let's take a look at his ground report while he was caught amid the crossfire.
We're currently in the Ashkelon area of southern Israel, and you can hear the air raid siren immediately went off, and moments after that air raid siren, you had a number of rockets that came in and effective countermeasures. Immediately you could hear very effective countermeasures being taken. We rushed to the inside this shelter here. You can see the damage. We left our equipment. Our equipment was on the road. We just left our equipment and ran for safety. As of now, that rocket has been intercepted. No damage on ground, no loss of property. It's over. Okay? No. 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and after that you can go. Okay, so it's still not all clear. Okay, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. Okay, so we are being told another 2 to 3 minutes. We need to stay inside, and after that we can come outside. But as of now, all people, just watch. Everybody just left their vehicles in the middle of the road wherever they did and rushed to the nearest shelter. That is now standard operating procedure. The situation here in Escalates in southern Israel, you can look at the damage. This is a bank, it's a huge bank. The rocket fell very close to this area, and you can see the damage to the bank and the shops all around. In fact, even this shop behind me, you can see the damage that was caused. All the window panes shattered, this shop, destruction immense. But as of now, the effort as far as the locals are concerned, this vehicle, they just left all their stuff, came inside the shelter. That's my tripod, that's my bag. The moment the air raid siren came off, we just left everything and came inside the shelter. Gaurav Sawant in Escalates, southern Israel, reporting for India Today.
All right, we also have Ashutosh Mishra, who's on ground as Hamas rockets continue to pound Israel. Ashutosh brings us ground reality where vehicles completely charred, roads caved in, and one can have a look at the houses, the locality's residential areas all bombarded.
5 minutes ago, you just heard those sounds of the blast. The sound that you heard of the blast. This is the real images from here. This is exactly the bomb. Actually, the rocket were dropped, and look at the massive destruction. So this is just a matter of 5 minutes. So I could realize, because I was at the nearest point of the Gaza in Ashkelon, that was in totally open terrain, and it was so scary that when I had to run with my equipments immediately to the shelter area, and within 30-40 seconds it was all over. And then we heard some very loud explosion. The rocket part actually dropped here. You can see the rescue forces, security forces are now controlling the damage. The firefighting team are now dousing the fire. This entire portion has been burned. These are the exclusive images only on India Today. India Today is the first channel in the epicenter of this war in Israel, in southern part of Israel. So we were seeing literally a massive retaliation. In fact, the Iron Dome was also responding. In fact, see, even at the moment we can hear the loud explosion. See, the fighter jets are scrambled, and the one rocket shell probably dropped here, and this is a multiple of these cars. You can count one, there's another car, and then here 3, 4. So 5 cars almost burned, totally burned. This entire house, the one property, and looks like this is where the shell. This is the exclusive image of the. Look at this. The rocket exactly fell here, and look at this massive damage it has done. So clearly, it is not that kind of, but this explains the kind of ammunitions that the Hamas had, and this looks like part of those things. So you can see the dent it has made on the road and here. So this is the area where the rocket fell, and it has a potential periphery.
All right, we're cutting across live to Ashutosh Mishra, who's right at the war-torn zone. Ashutosh, give us your location. How severe is the situation there? Are air sirens still on? Do we know if rockets are still being fired from the Gaza side, from the Hamas terrorists, as Israel has stepped up its attack and managed to neutralize nearly 1,500 Hamas terrorists on their soil?
Well, situation, Nabila, remains grim. I'm here in Jerusalem at the ground zero, and these are the images at every point and check. There are heavily armed police personnel guarding and in fact checking every vehicle. Remember, Jerusalem also remains the area where you have a mixed population, both Jews and also Arabs, Arabian residents living. So that also makes it vulnerable. So the frisking, checking, everything, that remains very grim at every point. In fact, my passport was just also checked because they are also checking upon the journalists who are coming from the Middle East nation. So that explains the furious situation as we go further in the town. Of course, this is being Monday and usually peak time of the traffic. Mostly it looks deserted, not many people out on the road. In fact, even yesterday several rockets were fired, and there are a few places just in the outskirt of the Jerusalem where the rockets were fired, but the defense system of Israel quite responded. But here even the Jerusalem is coming under the target, and that's where the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the iconic Jerusalem's identity, that's Al-Aqsa Mosque. We are en route to that place, and here all you see barely few people because the situation remains tame. Only heavily, security arrangements that have been made. So via the Damascus gate, we are en route to the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and this is the outer boundary of that particular area. So at this remains situation, there is a heavy deployment even of the reserve forces, and they are keeping a very close check on the people, those who are visiting here. This is the precaution measure. In fact, all the railway stations and the tram stations, those all bunkers and everything that have been put, I can see security deployment here. They're requesting it not to place the camera. So there you see all these heavily guarded police personnels. This has remained a very challenging job for at this moment during this crisis of time. So the personnel are saying do not enter this area because of course that will give information also to their enemies, because now the Hamas is also doing precision attacks, not just random rockets, as they know. They have seen the vulnerability of the Iron Dome, the air defense system of Israel. In fact, we have also been advised by the police personnel, since this area also dominated by the residents of the Arab countries. So they say because of this conflict situation, let me turn the camera. Security.
Right. Ashutosh, if you could give us a brief insight and understanding into the hostages that Hamas has taken in. Where are they located? Where are the spots they're hiding those hostages? Because this is, of course, what they're using to negotiate. Or there's no negotiation here. It's clear that Hamas wants to do maximum damage. They don't mind dying themselves. And they've taken these Israelis into hostages, and they've hidden them where? The question is, where are these hostages? And if Israel is attacking Hamas regions like Gaza Strip, is it not risky that the hostages also might be located right there?
Not just Gaza. Many believe that Sardut is one of the areas, Sardut, which remains the border between Gaza and the Israel territory. So most likely there are the bunkers that were made, the shelter, those were made for the people. That could have been potentially used by these organizations, these terror outfits, where they are hiding. But it is also believed that many in a hostage-like situation, if you want advantage, you also take them along to your safe territory in case of there is a negotiation required. But even the kind of warning that they are giving, that if there are further rockets attack, they will massacre, then even upload the videos. That makes really another difficult situation for the Israeli forces and troops, because you required evacuation. Subsequently, also push away those terrorists and neutralize them. So while the Gaza Patti is being cornered by the Israeli troops, the Air Force, or the ground troops, the infantries and the reserves, the major challenging also remain to hunt out those high. Also reports with the Israeli intelligence that terror groups and their personals have infiltrated within Israeli territories and they could be hiding anywhere. And that's exactly happening. System, every transport medium, everything being prison checked, because several videos are out on road that how the those organizations.
All right, Ashutosh's connection is patchy. Of course, it's a war-torn zone. Signals are quite tricky. These visuals that we're showing to you are of Hamas terrorists who managed to raid a music festival that was happening right along the Israel-Gaza border area, where over 260 bodies have been found, all strewn around the event venue. So you see a video here that we're playing out for you that shows that festival that was raided, and that's still sending chills down our spine. We're looking at that video where young girls and boys, revelers who were just having a good time right on the day of the Jewish festival, their auspicious day it was. It was a party, certainly, music festival that was happening on the sidelines of that Jewish festival. That was raided with Hamas terrorists descending through paragliders and came in motor vehicles, gunned down those cars that were parked, and then ventured the event venue and almost butchered nearly 260 girls and boys, young people who were partying away. Gaurav Sawant is also with us. Gaurav, over to you as we see that Israel has really stepped up attacks on Gaza and Hamas terrorists. We also understand that Hamas has taken in over 150 people as hostage, and they're using that as bait. They warn Israel that if they don't stop bombarding Gaza areas and residential areas in Gaza, then they're going to execute the hostages live on cameras. How has Israel responded to this?
Israel is resolute in its response. Israel continues to pound strongholds of Hamas where we are. This is actually the last point where civilians are closest to the Gaza Strip. I want to show you this area. This area has been pounded extensively by Hamas terrorists and rockets. This vehicle that you see behind me, this motorcycle that you see behind me, completely shattered. But just look around me, you have the Israeli army that's deployed here in large numbers. Now, in the middle of the road till some time back, there was a body that was removed, someone who unfortunately killed in this shelling that took place in this locality. But the threat here is huge. If you look behind me, this is that access to Sderot and Beersheba. Sderot and Beersheba are the areas where Hamas terrorists or at least remnants could still be there. And that is why, if you notice in this settlement, they're going house by house, lane by lane, clearing this entire area. Extremely difficult to do so. But you also notice here in the skies, you have the F-16s that have taken off. The F-16s are pounding this place. And I also want to show you the movement that's taking place. Watch the speed and pace of the military movement in these visuals. Watch these Israeli defense forces that are now heading to the front lines, and not one but multiple vehicles, one after the other. There you see, this is Israel. They're sending in their resources, they're sending in their men and material right to the front lines, right behind us. See all this action that's taking place. These are military teams, these are medical teams, these are soldiers, because Israel is very clear the threat has to be neutralized, that has to be eliminated. And India today continues to report from ground zero. This is where the forces are moving to the front line. They're very clear about how they intend going about this. The road here is sealed for all civilian movement. Beyond this point, all you have...
We have a video that we're playing on our television screens. That it appears to be a video released by the Israeli Defense Forces that shows bombing along the Gaza Strip. So at least 500 of those hideouts of Hamas terrorists have been targeted. And the video there showing how areas, including residential areas at the Gaza Strip, are all being bombed relentlessly by Israel in their counterattack. 2 Palestinian journalists have also been killed here.
Right. Okay, so I'm not aware of what's happening on the other side of the Gaza Strip. I'm aware of what's happening right here. The Israeli army and the Israeli Air Force, they're mounting joint operations and joint operations in a very big way. All along this road, see the artillery, that's fighting the strongholds of Hamas in Gaza. Also see our armed personal carriers. What you also no, this is where you see civilians in Israel who are coming in large numbers to donate whatever is required by the Israeli forces. What you see here are people coming forward. They have to volunteer. They want to volunteer to be, for example, in the medical service, if ambulances are required, if healthcare is required, if food is required, if water is required, any war effort, entire Israel is standing together. And that is what we are showing you at this point where we are. This is that road to Beersheba. Everything has been closed. Look, the military movement, no civilian movement beyond this point, only military movement here. Military checkpoints have been set up all along this area. You saw all these vehicles that are going to the front line. So Israel in the next 24 to is preparing for a major offensive to neutralize the threat. The point that you pointed out, about civilians who've been held hostage. Initially, it was being said that dozens, but right now we are told the number could be more than 100, could be closer to 150, as every figure is collated, very carefully collated. But watch behind me. This is the road that goes to the front lines, and this is the road where military forces are coming and going constantly, because they are saying, should they need, there'll be surgical strikes, there'll be air strikes, there'll be artillery strikes. Days of tunnels right behind, the Gaza wall. That Gaza wall is just barely a couple of kilometers down the road from here. Several places that's been taken down. Heavy construction equipment also going in to take that up, to put that wall up once again. Once those walls are shored up, once that fence is back in place, once the military is deployed there completely, then the offensive begins, Nabila.
Right. While that said, Gaurav, if you could show us around, the visual that is coming from your end is slightly sketchy, but could you show us what's behind you and what kind of security has Israel launched to protect their civilians furthermore? Because we know that most of the terrorists, at least as per reports, at least 1,500 Hamas terrorists have been neutralized, and their bodies have been found in parts of southern Israel where they managed to infiltrate, but we're still not very sure if they've entered civilian homes and they're right now seated holding Israeli civilians hostage. So that clarity is yet to come. But what kind of security is the Israeli forces giving to civilians there? Do you feel safe at all?
So let me try and show you. Let me try and show you what's happening here. Now, this is that road that goes to the border. This is the road from where all vehicles are going. This is where you see Israeli army and Israeli police deployed. The Israeli army picket that's been deployed here. Let me show you that other location right in front. I'll try and zoom in, though, we've been told we don't go much closer to that point. This is the point that's been set. Beyond this, the area is still not sanitized completely. And if you look behind me, and I'll have to show this behind me because I'm not allowed to show cameras on the other side. If you look closely behind those armored personal carriers and those troop carriers, that is where the tanks. We'll try and show you in a little while. We'll try and get to that location. Show you that place, Nabila. This is where Israel is mounting its offensive. This is the place where you have tanks, their armored personal carriers, their artillery pieces, their infantry. Now, when armored personal carriers are deployed in large numbers, what does that indicate? That an armored offensive, a ground offensive on the is big preparation, and this is that ground zero for those operations to be mounted. This is the southern part, southern Israel, from where the operations are likely to be mounted. There are logistical bases that have been set up. There are administration camps, ADAM camps that have been set up, and beyond those ADAM camps are the frontline troops and the vehicles that we just showed you a moment ago. Those vehicles going forward. That is where these operations are going to be undertaken, perhaps in the next 24 to 48 hours. The big challenge as far as Israeli security forces are concerned is to ensure that hostages are safe. That's point one. Very important to ensure that their own area is completely sanitized, because they don't want to be attacked from the rear when they troop forward for the offensive on Hamas terror.
Well, Gaurav, if you could tell us a little more on Israel's tactic on issuing a complete blockade on Gaza. So basically no fuel, no food, none of that is allowed to be supplied into the Gaza Strip area, almost in an attempt to starve the population along Gaza. This is a strategic move that Israel has adopted. If you could tell us how effective has that been? And we know that Gaza Health Minister and the authorities there are pleading for a green corridor to push for medical aid for those Palestinians who've died.
You're absolutely right. And Israel is very clear about this blockade. No food, no fuel, no electricity, no gas supply to Gaza. But then also, as Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said, kill close to 800 Israeli citizens, children, old people, attack a music festival, kill people, then expect humanitarian supplies to continue. So yes, Israel is very clear that punitive action is being taken, and that is why civilians across are also being told to move back from some of the areas which at least according to Israel, the civilians in Gaza Strip, the locations close one those hotspots where at least Israel feels that Hamas terrorists are located. Their logistic, their administration camps, their command and control system, their ammunition, all of that is kept. Those areas being targeted, and they will continue to be targeted. Again, I want to show you these images of military hardware and military equipment that's coming into this area. Israel is very clear. As you hear in the backdrop, the artillery pieces go off. This is not a war-like situation. Nabila, as far as Israel is concerned, this is war, and they're fighting not to make any points, but they're fighting to win this war. There you see more resources are now going into those frontline areas. Right behind me, the trucks that you see, resources that are going into the frontline areas. More resources are coming. Is that where Israel is ready to a massive offensive? Whether it happens in the next 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours, well, that's the element of surprise that Israel wants to retain. But it's getting its numbers together to do so. All that preparation is happening right in front of our eyes, right where we are standing right now. We can see, at least at the tactical level, what's happening. The bigger picture, of course, will be no leadership in Jerusalem, and of course, the way they are planning military offensive into the Hamas-held territory.
Right. You know, as Israel really steps up their attack and are receiving help from the United States and many other countries, military aid from the United States specifically, you also have Hamas, who's now been aided by the Lebanon Shiite Islamic militant group, Hezbollah. So does that mean that this adds a lot of strength to Hamas at this point? What kind of aid do you think Hamas is receiving from Hezbollah? Is it just the jihadi group coming together, willing to die for this cause, or is it that they do have funds enough to aid Hamas's operation?
So more than the Hezbollah, it is actually, according to Israel, the Iranian administration, the Iranian regime, the Iranian government that is funding, arming, and launching these terror attacks, whether it's the Hamas here, the Hezbollah, Lebanon. There's also tension on the Syrian border, and where not just the United States, I mean, considering in the Mediterranean fleet, the US Navy has their aircraft carrier group. So, that's one aircraft with about 100 aircraft and electronic intelligence aircraft and helicopters and transport carriers, plus along with the aircraft carrier. I mean, the aircraft carrier moves with 7 to 8 destroyers, frigates, submarines, other, it's like a floating war machine in the Mediterranean Sea, and that has been sent across a very strong message that no other country should get involved in Israel's war on Hamas. Should Iran think it may want to, then there are consequences. Should the Bashar al-Assad regime in Syria think they may want to, or activate the Hezbollah on the Golan Heights front or the Sheba Farms front when it comes to the Hezbollah, well, Israel's already activated its troops and artillery even in that direction. Remember, an Israeli watchtower and a radar station was taken out by the Hezbollah, and 3 Hezbollah terrorists were neutralized immediately by the Israeli army. Similarly, on Golan Heights, additional forces have already been deployed. And remember, that border where you also have the United Nations deployed. It's the oldest United Nations mission I've reported from on ground in Lebanon along that UN border. That again is a very well fortified border with very high concrete, blocks and CCTV cameras and radar. So Israel has that border very, very well guarded. And now after this disaster with Hamas, they have their forces activated virtually on every border, all the way up to the Golan Heights, where Syria is on not to activate any of its, these fighters from that front. Emirates, Nabila, also warned Syria not to get activated. And once again, I want to show you these images of additional resources that are coming in for supplies to the front lines. See, these military vehicles are coming every few minutes. You have all other resources in here. War effort of the Israeli army where we are standing. Nabila.
Right, Gaurav. I really hope that you are safe. Please do not venture into those areas that are risky at this point. We know you have your flair when it comes to war zones, but yet you never know what happens. Every movement is, you got to be cautious. So please stay with us. You are precious to us. It's day 3 of the Israel-Hamas war. The situation on ground only escalates as Hamas has now been bombed with at least 500 of their hideouts being targeted by Israel. India Today's crew on ground, the only Indian crew at the epicenter, Gaurav Sawant and Ashutosh Mishra at the conflict zone. Let's have a quick look at those reports from Ground Zero, where both of our correspondents were caught in the crossfire.
Gunfire, rockets. Southern Israel has become a war zone after the attack by Hamas terrorists on Saturday, an Israeli counter-strike.
ये एक एक्टिव वॉर जोन है, ये देखिए लगातार रॉकेट दागे जा रहे हैं.
India Today's Gaurav Sawant was caught in a rocket attack in Ashkelon, one of the cities to be hit by the war. Our reports from Ground Zero reveal how rocket attacks by Hamas have destroyed homes. People have been shifted to bomb shelters, but many can be seen trying to retrieve whatever they can from their burnt-out homes.
ये मैं आपको यहाँ की स्थिति दिखा रहा हूँ. ये देखिए, यहाँ रॉकेट फट रहे हैं. ये यहाँ लगातार रॉकेट फट रहे हैं इजराइल में. ये देखिए, ये रॉकेट आया है और इसको रोकने के लिए यहाँ से इसको फायर किया जा रहा है. हमारी इकलौती टीम है. मैं जो आपको यहाँ से ये ग्राउंड रिपोर्ट दिखा रहा हूँ, ये हम आपको लगातार दिखाने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं. ये एक एक्टिव वॉर जोन है. ये देखिए, लगातार रॉकेट दागे जा रहे हैं. लगातार ये रॉकेट दागे जा रहे हैं. लोगों की जान जा सकती है. हमको यहाँ से सुरक्षित इलाके में जाने को बोला जा रहा है. हम सुरक्षित इलाके में भागने का यहाँ से प्रयास कर रहे हैं. किसी भी समय यहाँ कुछ भी हो सकता है और कभी भी यहाँ पर बम गिर सकता है, कुछ भी हो सकता है. हम एक सुरक्षित इलाके में जाने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं. ये एक शेल्टर है.
India Today reporters on the ground reveal the real extent of damage caused by rocket attacks by Hamas.
These are the exclusive images only on India Today. India Today is the first channel in the epicenter of this war in Israel, in southern part of Israel. So we were seeing literally a massive retaliation. In fact, the Iron Dome was also responding. In fact, see, even at the moment we can hear the loud explosion. See, the fighter jets are scrambled, and the one rocket shell probably dropped here, and this is multiple of these cars. You can count one. There's another car, and then here 3, 4. So 5 cars almost burned, totally burned. This entire house, the one property, and looks like This is where the shell, this is the exclusive image of the, look at this. The rocket exactly fell here, and look at this massive damage it has done. So clearly it is not, that kind of, but this explains the kind of ammunitions that the Hamas had, and this looks like part of, those things. So you can see the dent it has made on the road, and here. So this is the area where the rocket fell, and it has a potential periphery to bring destructions along, not just cars, but also several properties, including this one house. Now you see the rescue forces, the security forces, the IDF is at the side. Exclusive images on India Today, and the people, those who were inside, immediately heard siren. They went inside to the safer places, are now being rescued here. They are now being taken finally to the safer place. Look at this house. The entire rooftop was blown away. And this car was, you can see the windscreens totally broken, damaged. This is the war zone in Israel's southern part. In fact, when we landed at Escalates, people said there has been nothing since yesterday. Last night there was one explosion in a residential area. But all of a sudden, when I started approaching towards the open terrain nearest point of the Gaza, and if I could say just 100 meters there, the coastal line, the ocean line. So all of a sudden, in 5 minutes, we realized more than 50 rockets landing towards this Escalates area. And then, to see these cars, the security forces, the rescue forces are now assessing the potential damage that has been done.
You have to ask him.
Okay, I was saying it before going inside, you have to ask him, because they are assessing the kind of damage and also, taking a stock of the situation if there are still people inside. But if I just take you to the other side, that's a significant damage. Look at this. Those people who were inside, they're quite terrified and scared, and trust me, it was scary. When I heard nearly 50 loud explosions, anyone could be feared. Now the IDF forces are on the mission to evacuate and rescue. Now I'm going inside the house that was, came under attack, because, if nearly 1 foot of the diameter, if there is a massive explosion, it makes a dent on a road. Clearly, what? Another? When I'm being said, over there. Okay. Oh, that's an electric cable. They say even electric cables were damaged. The people are, showing us the kind of damage has been done. I'm gradually closing to the other area. यहाँ सबसे ज़्यादा नुकसान हुआ है, और जैसे हम देखते हैं, the IDF forces are now trying to, clear as much as assets are possible. Look at these damage.
India Today is the only Indian channel reporting from the war zone. Further south from Ashkelon lies the Gaza Strip. Israel is reportedly amassing troops for what many suspect could be a ground offensive into Gaza. With Gaurav Sawant and Ashutosh Mishra from Israel, Bureau Report, India Today. Israel-Hamas blood feud returns. All-out war engulfs West Asia.
Again you hear another blast.
Fearless reportage and exclusive news breaks.
तो यहाँ से ये ground report दिखा रहा हूँ. किसी भी समय यहाँ कुछ भी हो सकता है.
India's biggest conflict reporters, live and exclusive.
You just heard those sounds of the blast. Is the real images. Look at the massive destruction.
West Asia war through India Today cameras.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNP Group company.
शिवसेना हमारी नेचुरल एलाय है राष्ट्रवादी कांग्रेस ये हमारी पॉलिटिकल एलाय है।
इलीगल सरकार बैठी हुई है, वो सत्ता में जयते हैं। अगर सत्य बोलो तो डराते हैं, धमकाते हैं। ऐसे देश नहीं चलता है।
राष्ट्रपति शासन लगाने का आइडिया ही शरद पवार जी का था।
No question is going with vision.
In 2022 June, the NCP MLAs, all 51, our desire at that time was to join a BJP-led government in Maharashtra.
All the allegations made against the NCP were politically motivated.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com. You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNP Group company.
With US President Joe Biden, who's expressed complete support and solidarity to Israel, we hear that warships are being also moved closer to the border. How do you think the world must respond? Should they sit back and watch, or is there some assistance, cooperation that should be given to Israel?
Well, any assistance that Israel demands with regard to weaponry or systems they might need is something which the U.S. Congress will support. But it's not clear whether the White House is really going to support Israel in extricating the Hamas terrorists, because it seems that Tony Blinken, Secretary of State, his greatest concern is the spread of this. This isn't just going to be limited to the Gaza Strip. After all, when we talk about paragliders, where were those paragliders trained? If they were trained inside the Islamic Republic of Iran, which seems likely, that raises the stakes a great deal. And so when I look at American naval ships going towards the Eastern Mediterranean, that can be just as much to deter Israeli aircraft for taking off towards Iran as it could be to protect Israel from other aircraft flying in.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com.
All right, welcome back. We have some big news coming in from Israel as the government of Israel has decided, or rather approved, Defense Minister's request to recruit at least 360,000 soldiers from their reserve forces. Israel now to recruit 3 lakh reserve soldiers. The government gets a nod for 3 lakh more soldiers to escalate the war against Gaza's Hamas. The Israel-Palestine war has been on for 4 days now, and as Israel steps up its attack, it bolsters its army's capacity with nearly 360,000 soldiers who they intend to add to their arsenal, their reserve forces that will double up their force to counter Hamas's strikes. Israel has recruited nearly 3 lakh reserve soldiers. They are looking at adding in another 360,000, and they've got a nod from the Israeli government. The Defense Ministry, who's appealed for extra strength, one should know that they have enough in their arsenal for now. Military prowess is far better than what Palestine can boast of, or Hamas militants can really boast of. So it will be, at least this war will have Israel fighting with great capacity. But at what cost is the question? You already have nearly 1,500 people collectively who've died in this war. It started with Hamas terrorists bombarding Israel, caught them unaware. And here you have Israel now stepping up their attack against Hamas and getting as much strength as possible, adding nearly 360,000 soldiers to their military. Now, the war between Israel and Palestine is turning grim with each passing day. Even as Israel's counter-strikes at Gaza are far from over, Hamas has announced that it will begin execution and live televised killings of Israeli hostages for every building bombarded in Gaza. Hamas says that they will not negotiate on Israeli captives under fire. Regime must pay a high price. Hamas says that the ongoing operation against Israel will continue while rejecting any negotiations on Israeli captives as long as the regime's attacks on besieged Gaza Strip continues. Meanwhile, hundreds of Israeli citizens are currently being held hostage by Hamas. Nearly 150 is what's suspected. In fact, as per reports, the latest information is about the abduction of a woman, Doron, and her 2 daughters. Another girl, Noah, who was seen enjoying a party right at that music festival with her boyfriend. She was abducted along with her boyfriend. No news of their safety yet.
From this moment, we announce that for every attack towards our people who are safe in their homes without prior warning, unfortunately, we have to execute one of the civilian enemy captives that we have hostage. And we will be forced to broadcast this in video and audio. We announce this decision and we hold the responsibility in front of the whole world to the Zionist enemy and its leadership that they are responsible for this decision.
דודה שלי התקשרה לאמא בצרחות, תפתחו את הפייסבוק, תפתחו את הפייסבוק. אמא לא הצליחה בכלל לפתוח, רעדה בכל הגוף שלה. אני פתחתי מהטלפון שלי וראיתי זוועה. ראיתי את האסון הכי גדול שאפשר בכלל לדמיין. סבתא שלי על הרצפה בבית שלה, רצוחה בסרטון. כל הרצפה דם, סבתא שלי שוכבת שם. המחבל פשוט לקח את הנייד הפרטי שלה, צילם אותה והעלה את זה לקיר פייסבוק הפרטי שלה. ככה התבשרנו, ככה גילינו את זה. צרחנו ברמות, כולם פה איבדו את זה, צרחנו. זה מראות הכי קשים שאפשר בכלל לדמיין ולהריץ לעצמך בראש. פשוט זה לא עוזב אותנו עד עכשיו, זה לא יעזוב אותנו בחיים.
Now, dozens of Israelis have been taken hostage by Hamas terrorists. Among them are several youngsters who were attending this music festival right on the sidelines of the auspicious Jewish day. One of the most devastating images that came in was 25-year-old Noah, who was seen pleading, begging to be let go of. Her boyfriend was also taken in as hostage. She was also being taken on a motorcycle while she was begging to be released. Here are some of those images that have come in as defining moments of this unfortunate war.
Women tortured, murdered and spat on. Students abducted in broad daylight. These videos give you a glimpse of the horror that's unfolded in Israel over the weekend as Hamas groups entered the country and targeted innocent women. Unfathomable atrocities have taken place in Israel, particularly at a rave party near the Gaza Strip, where hundreds of casualties were reported. The count is at 260 currently from this gathering alone. In this video posted by one of the partygoers, Hamas terrorists can be seen paragliding into the party venue even as attendees dance away, with no idea of the bloodshed that would take place just seconds later. As terrorists indiscriminately opened fire, youngsters can be seen running for their lives and hiding behind tents.
All right, I'm cutting across to Ashutosh Mishra joining us live. India Today's correspondents. One should know that this is the only Indian crew who's reporting from the epicenter, that war-torn zone. Ashutosh, give us more on the Israeli forces stepping up support, asking for at least 360,000 reserve forces to accompany them in this war against Gaza.
And well, Nabila, most of the civilians who have been asked to report back as a reserve, and they'll be deployed at several pockets, because the arms and the fighters will be sent to the affected areas, whereas the civilians, those will be part of the reserve, will be looking after the law and order situation. But for now, I'm here at ground zero in Jerusalem, and this can be identified with these images right behind me as the iconic Al-Aqsa Mosque here. And usually, let me get you the images from the back camera, that how this historic place, which is mostly crowded, totally crowded, are now wearing a deserted look. Barely few footfall, if I could count, is not more than 30 or 40 people in. So I just took around, in fact, and this is here the old city of Jerusalem. This is very iconic, historic, and it has its own significance. But for now, because of the tension that has erupted in Israel after the terror attack unleashed by the Hamas organizations, even on Monday here, the rockets which were fired from the Hamas from the Gaza Strip also attacked the Jerusalem city, but the air defense system, the Iron Dome, immediately responded, retaliated, and this is the Jerusalem's most iconic place, which is over the years and almost 365 days of the year is totally flooded with the tourists. But all you see now is it wearing absolutely deserted look. You can count the number of Nabila, the tourists are here. It's very few. And this explains the fury. In fact, let me also tell you that since I've been coming to this stretch, the usual distance time is barely 7 to 8 minutes, but it took me more than 1 hour. And because of any outsiders they see, that's heavily frisked, checked. My passport has been checked by more than 10 times. And that exactly why it is taking too much time, because you need separate permissions. And then there are suspicions going on amongst the security agencies. The police deployment this way, what I'm being told by the locals, is absolutely unprecedented. This has never been the case in at least last few years. In fact, this entire old town and all the stretches I have come across, all I see only the security personals guarding these territories from the unknown sources. And the reason that's being told is the number of Hamas terrorists who have infiltrated in Israel. And this place remains vulnerable, as this has also, the population from the Arabian countries. So they believe, and there is apprehension that what if they are being given sheltered, or the the support from this place. And let me also zoom out to these images for our viewers, the old city of Jerusalem. And perhaps why the security frisking all the roads, all vehicles en route to this area is being heavily frisked for any suspicious activities from northern side to the southern side, and even from the West Bank where we have a mixed population. That remains a very vulnerable, and that is the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the historic and mosque which is the identity of Jerusalem. But for now there have been several attacks, and every time they hear a siren, Nabila, it just takes a few seconds for the people and they immediately rush to the shelters or the bunkers to prevent them from any possible injuries. But that remains a major question, that Hamas, this time their intent was not to attack the Israeli authorities, but this time their target is the innocent civilians, and that is also mounting a pressure on the Netanyahu government to respond and perhaps eliminate the threat as soon as possible, because now this is really bringing huge risk to the lives of millions of the Israelis in this
country. What we know
Nabila.
now is that many of the Hamas terrorists have been killed on Israel's soil, but we can't discount the fact that these Hamas terrorists could be hiding in civilian homes at the moment. But Israel has stepped up its attack at the moment. India Today is on a rolling coverage. You've seen our reporters Gaurav Sawant and Ashutosh Mishra, who are on ground, the war-torn zone, bringing us every update amid that risk. Stay with us. More news and updates on the same on the other side of a short break.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNP Group company.
Weather forecast now. Delhi, maximum 36 and minimum 28 degrees. Mumbai, maximum 32 and minimum 26 degrees. Kolkata, maximum 35 and minimum 25 degrees. Bangalore, maximum 27 and minimum 23 degrees. Chennai, maximum 32 and minimum 27 degrees. Hyderabad, maximum 32 and minimum 23 degrees.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNP Group company.
Weather forecast now. Delhi, maximum 36 and minimum 28 degrees. Mumbai, maximum 32 and minimum 26 degrees. Kolkata, maximum 35 and minimum 25 degrees. Bangalore, maximum 27 and minimum 23 degrees. Chennai, maximum 32 and minimum 27 degrees. Hyderabad, maximum 32 and minimum 23 degrees.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a B&P Group company.
Very good afternoon. India Today's rolling coverage on the Israel-Palestinian war. Death toll mounting to 900 on the Israeli side, while nearly 700 killed on the Palestinian side. I'm taking us through all the updates as our reporters Gaurav Sawant and Ashutosh Mishra are on ground, the epicenter. Let's take a look. The death toll only mounting in Israel with 900 dead. Big escalation in the Israel-Palestine war. Bodies of 1,500 terrorists have been found in Israel. Israel have neutralized all those terrorists, Hamas terrorists who have infiltrated their borders.
Israel is at war. We didn't want this war. It was forced upon us in the most brutal and savage way.
Hamas threatens to kill hostages, says no negotiations with Israel over hostages, all taken in by the Hamas terrorists until Gaza stops attacks on Gaza Strip. Moment of attack on Israel music festival caught on cameras. Armed Hamas terrorists swoop in on the festival. 260 young partygoers butchered. Global support pours in for Israel. France, Canada, UK have backed Israel amid the war. Trudeau condemns the glorification of the violence. Macron says Hamas has no jurisdiction or legitimacy. Amid the massive humanitarian crisis looming in Israel and Palestine, India Today reports from the crossfire. In fact, Gaurav Sawant and Ashutosh Mishra, who are in that war zone, bringing us all those live updates.
Left our equipment and ran for safety. As of now, that rocket has been intercepted. No damage on ground, no loss of property.
Now, Israel-Palestine war enters fourth day as Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has vowed to launch a massive attack on Hamas with unprecedented intensity, while Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has called for UN mediation to prevent humanitarian crisis from playing out. As Israeli Defense Minister orders complete siege on Gaza Strip with no electricity, food or fuel, Israeli Defense Forces began the ground invasion of Gaza. Israel's military relentlessly has pounded Gaza Strip, hitting more than 500 targets in blockaded area as fighting rages with Hamas. Clashes in Israel rage on as Hamas fighters still hold out. The death toll in Israel has now risen to 900. People who have injured are nearly 2,600. Rockets continue to rain on the city of Ashkelon in southern Israel. Dashcam footage of the Supernova Music Festival has shown how Hamas attacked Israeli youth, killing 260, abducting a lot many more.
Now the Hamas is also doing precision attacks, not just random rockets, as they know they have seen the vulnerability of the Iron Dome, the air defense system of Israel. In fact, we have also been advised by the police personnel, since this area also dominated by the residents of the Arab country. So they say because of this conflict situation, let me turn the camera, security apparatus, and that will give you another idea that what sorts of not just Gaza. Many believe that Sardut is one of the areas, Sardut, which remains the border between Gaza and the Israel territory. So most likely there are the bunkers that were made, the shelter, those were made for the people. That could have been potentially used by these organizations, these terror outfits, where they are hiding. But it is also believed that many in a hostage-like situation, if you want advantage, you also take them along to your safe territory in case of there is a negotiation required. I'm here in Jerusalem at the ground zero, and these are the measures at every point and check. There are heavily armed police personnel guarding and in fact checking every vehicle. Remember, Jerusalem also remains the area where you have a mixed population, both Jews and also Arabs, Arabian residents living. So that also makes it vulnerable. So the frisking, checking, everything, that remains very grim at every point. In fact, my passport was just also checked because they are also checking upon the journalists who are coming from the Middle East nation. So that explains the furious situation as we go further in the town. Of course, this is being Monday, and usually a peak time of the traffic. Mostly it looks deserted, not many people out on the road. In fact, even yesterday several rockets were fired, and there are a few places just in the outskirt of the Jerusalem where the rockets were fired, but the defense system of Israel quite responded. But here even the Jerusalem is coming under the target, and that's where the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the iconic Jerusalem's identity, that's Al-Aqsa Mosque. We are en route to that place, and here all you see barely few people because the situation remains tame. Only heavily, security arrangements that have been made. So via the Damascus gate, we are en route to the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and this is the outer boundary of that particular area. So at this remains situation, there is a heavy deployment even of the reserve forces, and they are keeping a very close check on the people, those who are visiting here. This is the precaution measure. In fact, all the railway stations and the tram stations, those all bunkers and everything that have been put, I can see security deployment here. They're requesting it not to place the camera. So there you see all these heavily guarded police personnels. This has remained a very challenging job for at this moment during this crisis of time.
बड़ी संख्या में है इजराइल के आर्मी के, आप कमांडोज को मेरे पीछे देख सकते हैं। उनका एक पुलिस चेक पॉइंट यहाँ बनाया गया है, क्योंकि इसके बाद का इलाका सुरक्षित नहीं है, वहां अभी भी ऑपरेशन चल रहे हैं। और मेरे साथ एली रोमानोस्की है। एली जेरूसलम विश्वविद्यालय में हिंदी पढ़ चुके हैं सईद, और ये आपको जानकर बहुत अच्छा लगेगा। एली बहुत अच्छी हिंदी भी बोलते हैं। एली, इस समय कितना खतरा है इजराइल के ऊपर हमास का आतंकवाद का?
ये चीज चेंज चल रहा है, और क्योंकि इस मोमेंट में यहाँ इस प्लेस में कोई बड़ी खतरा नहीं है, लेकिन ये हर मिनट चेंज हो सकता है। एक मिनट के बाद कोई मिसाइल्स ला सकते हैं, और बहुत many things can happen.
Many things can happen. सईद, ये यहाँ पर अगर मैं आपको खतरे की बात बताऊं, एली और मैं दोनों आपको दिखाएंगे। देखिए यहाँ पर ये जो गाड़ी है ये पूरी तरह से ध्वस्त है। ये देखिए ये गाड़ी किस तरह से ध्वस्त है। यहाँ पर रॉकेट और मिसाइलें गिरी थी। वहां पर कुछ दिन पहले तक एक शव, एक हमास के आतंकवादी का इस सड़क पर पड़ा था। तो एली, अगर हमास के आतंकवादी यहां तक आ गए थे जहां हम इस समय है, तो ये दिखाता है कि इजराइल के कितने अंदर तक उन्होंने घुस के वार किया। लेकिन क्या अभी भी एस्डरोट का इलाका या दक्षिणी इजराइल का जो बाकी इलाका है वो पूरी तरह से सुरक्षित है, या अभी भी हमास के आतंकवादी कहीं छिपे हो सकते हैं?
अभी तक सब कुछ नहीं मालूम है, लेकिन वहाँ इस एरिया में गाजा तक कोई 6 किलोमीटर है। हम गाजा से 6 किलोमीटर नजदीक हैं, और इस एरिया में कोई फाइटिंग इज गोइंग ऑन एज वी स्पीक। दिस पार्ट में वहाँ और वहाँ क्षेत्रों में कोई तैयारी हो रहा है। सेना कोई प्रिपरेशन करते हैं। मोस्ट ऑफ द फाइटिंग वहाँ है। इस रीजन के लिए हम यहाँ स्टैंडिंग कर सकते हैं और वहाँ नहीं।
इस समय सईद, अगर मैं आपको बताऊं, मैं आपको यहाँ की पूरी तस्वीर दिखाना चाहूंगा सईद। यहाँ लगातार युद्ध के लिए रसद सामग्री पहुंचाई जा रही है। युद्ध में ईंधन की बहुत महत्वपूर्ण आवश्यकता होती है, और ये देखिए, ये इजराइल की सेना की गाड़ियां हैं जो ईंधन लेकर जा रही है। ये इजराइल की सेना के सिपाही है, ये सरहदों पर लगातार जा रहे हैं और मुस्कुरा रहे हैं। इनका मनोबल देखिए, मनोबल इनका ऊंचा है, और ये मुस्कुराते हुए जा रहे हैं क्योंकि अब ये अपने देश की रक्षा के लिए इजराइल की सरहदों पर तैनात होंगे। किसी भी वक्त सईद, किसी भी वक्त आप ऊपर यहाँ पर जो F-16 लड़ाकू विमान है वो लगातार सॉर्टीज कर रहे हैं, जो F-16 लड़ाकू विमान है, और यहाँ तोपें भी गरज रही हैं इस इलाके में।
F-16, F-35, you can hear them flying ऊपर में, और बहुत टैंक वहाँ क्षेत्र में। वहाँ कोई हमास के बारी was lying कोई 25 कोई 20 साथ लाइन।
सही, जो चिंता की बात है, जैसा एली हमको बता भी रहे थे कि यहाँ पर टैंक और बख्तरबंद गाड़ियां इजराइल की सेना के पूरे अलग अलग भागों से उन्हें यहाँ पर लाया गया है, और बख्तरबंद गाड़ियां और टैंक जब आते हैं किसी जगह पर, तो वो आप अंदाजा लगा सकते हैं सईद कि वो एक ऑफेंसिव रोल के लिए पूरी तरह से तैयार है। जिन जगहों पर वो कांटेदार तार फेंस को तोड़ दिया गया था, उस इलाके में अब टैंकों की तैनाती हो चुकी है, और ऑफेंसिव ऑपरेशन के लिए इजराइल की सेना पूरी तरह से तैयार है। लेकिन एक बार अगर आप फिर हमारे पास आएंगे तो मैं आपको बताऊंगा कि किस तरह से जो इजराइल के लोगों को बंधक बनाया गया है वो बड़ी चिंता की बात है। जो हॉस्टेजेस, ये देखिए, ये एक और तोप की आवाज आपने सुनी। ये प्रिसिशन स्ट्राइक्स यहाँ पर लगातार चल रही हैं हमास के ठिकानों पर सईद।
I am here in Jerusalem city center. I am inside a bomb shelter, and this is the siren right now in the city center of Jerusalem. Take a look. We have just witnessed a siren, and you can hear the booms and the thumps. Of rockets falling. I'm right here in the city center of Jerusalem.
All right, as we track those visuals, we have with us Elon Levy, former international media advisor to the President of Israel. Thanks very much, Elon, for joining us. Give us your sense on the kind of help and how the attack by Hamas terrorists on Israel is being viewed the world over. We know there's been a collective statement that's come in from Italy, France, Germany, and United Kingdom that they stand with Israel. But there's a lot of conflicting thoughts behind this, some of them justifying that Palestinians have been fighting for free Palestine for over 5 decades. It's been unprecedented attacks from Israel on areas of Palestine and, of course, the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And this is in retaliation.
Let's talk about what is unprecedented. On Saturday morning, Hamas launched an invasion of Israel that went door to door, murdering babies, abducting grandmothers, massacring everyone in their sleep and anyone they found in the street. In absolute terms, the current death toll from Hamas's slaughter on Saturday morning is the equivalent of 5 Mumbai massacres, and the death toll is counting. That's not adjusted for population. That is in absolute terms. We are burying 5 times as many people who were murdered in the Mumbai massacre. What Israel suffered on Saturday was one of the deadliest terror attacks in world history and the single biggest massacre of Jews since the Holocaust. Israel is a country in trauma. It's a country in agony. It's a country in pain. And one thing that gives us consolation is actually the outpouring of support that Israel has received from the international community, which understands that Hamas is not only a terror organization, it is an enemy of humanity. That joint statement from the UK, the US, France, Italy, and Germany is very important. They're pledging to support Israel in its efforts for self-defense, as Israel now understands that it can't go into another round in the Gaza Strip to try to deter Hamas and buy more time until the next inevitable round. The time is now to destroy Hamas as a military and governing body inside the Gaza Strip, because Israel cannot continue to exist with the reality in which an ISIS-style organization with cruelty meeting, if not exceeding the cruelty that we saw from other jihadist organizations, controls a strip of territory a 1-hour drive away from Tel Aviv and has massacred approaching 1,000 people in the current death toll, with over 100 Israelis believed to be held hostage inside the Gaza Strip.
Right. And Elon, since you spoke of the hostages, that's precisely a point where Hamas terrorists are now trying to use to negotiate with Israel. Do you believe that this is going to be a tough task to ensure that your civilians are saved right at a time counter Hamas terrorists? How does Israel plan to do that in your view, to ensure safety of those hostages?
At the moment, it's not clear what Hamas intends to do with those hostages. Are they really bargaining chips that Hamas is willing to release in exchange for Palestinian prisoners, terrorists inside Israeli jails? Or does it intend to massacre them in ISIS-style execution videos? We do not know what they are planning to do to, let me remind your viewers, children, grandmothers, women aged over the age of 85 whose grandchildren are begging for help because their grandmothers take medication and they're now bound and gagged inside a tunnel somewhere inside the Gaza Strip. It's very difficult to see how we are going to get our civilian hostages back alive, our friends, our families, our grandmothers, our babies, our brothers and sisters. And if I have one appeal to the international community, it's to use every available lever of pressure to demand the immediate and unconditional release of the Israeli hostages inside the Gaza Strip. This is a situation that is inconceivable, indescribable, and completely intolerable.
Right, Elon, we heard a video that was released by the Hamas terrorists claiming that if you don't stop bombarding Gaza's civilian settlements, there are, in fact, rockets being hurled, we believe, as per reports coming in, on residential areas of Gaza as well. And they claim that if you don't stop bombarding Gaza, we're going to execute those hostages live on television. Has this deterred Israel from carrying on this onslaught?
Hamas is a brutal, cruel, barbaric, sadistic, jihadist organization, the sort the world has experienced before in the form of ISIS, and now Israel is coming up against the same thing, the same desire to use spectacular violence in order to rally support among their own depraved supporters, and they're not afraid to use that violence. Now, Israel has to tread very carefully, but at the same time, Israel is committed now to destroying Hamas's governing capabilities inside the Gaza Strip in order to deny them the ability to do the exact same thing. And everyone has to be very clear about who is responsible for the current situation, and that is the jihadist organization known as Hamas inside the Gaza Strip and their puppet masters in Iran, who have been funding Hamas to the tune of tens of millions of dollars every month, and who also bear responsibility for the terrible, terrible atrocity and massacre of innocents.
Right. On a final note, we hear that nearly 300,000 odd reserve forces have been asked to join in this fight against Hamas. Do you have enough in your military arsenal?
Israel is calling up the biggest call-up of reserves in its history. I'm in Tel Aviv now, and I can tell you the city is an absolute ghost town because so many people have been called up. All the civilians who are still here are urgently committing to the war effort in order to raise supplies and money and food and clothes for the soldiers on the front. The IDF says we have enough supplies, we have everything we need, but there's no doubt that this is going to be a very serious challenge ahead for Israel, especially if this situation escalates into a war on multiple fronts. We're seeing several exchanges and skirmishes on the northern border of Israel with Hezbollah in Lebanon. And the concern at the moment is that Hezbollah will think that Israel is too weak and attack from the direction of Lebanon as well, forcing Israel to defend itself from the north and from the south, which will be a very dangerous situation, not only inside Israel, but also inside Lebanon when Israel is forced to react with extreme force in order to stop the assault of potentially thousands of rockets falling on the Israeli home front every day.
Right. Well, thank you very much for joining us and giving us those details that's coming in from Israel. Of course, we have our reporters on ground, Gaurav Sawant and Ashutosh Mishra. Thank you very much, who are really bringing us every aspect and most accurate information from that war-torn zone. These are the visuals that we are getting from the epicenter of this war. And while Israel believes that this is backed, Hamas is backed by Iran, here's the latest update as we are tracking coming in from Iran. An official statement from the supreme leader of Iran, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who's denied any Iranian involvement in Hamas's shock weekend attack on Israel, despite its strong support for Palestinian militant group. So Iran basically has denied any kind of support. Iran says no hand in Hamas attack on Israel. Iran's supreme leader denies any involvement in the attacks. Ali Khamenei says absolutely no involvement in Israel attacks. Well, of course, Israel has been saying from day one that Hamas is being fully backed by Iran and that they're being funded. Military aid is being given by Iran. While here you have a first statement coming in from Iran itself, the supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who's denied any Iranian involvement in Hamas's shock weekend attack and says we have no involvement in Hamas attack on Israel. This is Iran responding, even as forces from Lebanon, we believe, have joined in this, the Hezbollah terror organization. Again, the Shiite terror organization from Lebanon has joined hands with Hamas to attack Israel. And there's a larger sense and accusation by Israel themselves that it's Iran who's backing this attack by Hamas completely. Now you have a first statement breaking his silence. Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader of Iran, who says no involvement and no backing Hamas on Israel. All right, as the attacks, counter-attacks from Israel against Gaza hideouts continue, the IDF planes have attacked a mosque in Gaza Strip containing the operational headquarters of the terrorist organization Hamas, another headquarters that was used by operatives in the anti-tank force of the terror organization, and 2 additional operational apartments as well. Well, this is not the only mosque that's been bombarded. We understand that nearly 7 mosques have been bombarded in the last 2 days as the war has entered day 4. Here you have Israel, who's managed to strike at a mosque. In the latest, a mosque where it contained operational headquarters of the terror organization Hamas has been targeted. I'm going to slip into a short break. All those visuals on your screens there, we're tracking live day 4 of this war, India Today, bringing you the latest. Thank you very much for watching.
Israel-Hamas blood feud returns. All-out war engulfs West Asia.
Again, you hear another blast.
Fearless reportage and exclusive news breaks.
तो यहाँ से एक ground report दिखा रहा हूँ. किसी भी समय यहाँ कुछ भी हो सकता है.
India's biggest conflict reporters, live and exclusive.
You just heard those sounds of the blast. Is the real images. Look at the massive destruction.
West Asia war through India Today cameras.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNP Group company.
शिवसेना हमारी नेचुरल एलाय है, राष्ट्रवादी कांग्रेस ये हमारी पॉलिटिकल एलाय है।
इलीगल सरकार बैठी हुई है, वो सत्ता में जयते हैं। अगर सत्य बोलो तो डराते हैं, धमकाते हैं। ऐसे देश नहीं चलता है।
राष्ट्रपति शासन लगाने का आइडिया ही शरद पवार जी का था।
No question is going with vision.
In 2022 June, the NCP MLAs, all 51, our desire at that time was to join a BJP-led government in Maharashtra.
All the allegations made against the NCP were politically motivated.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNP Group company.
Hello everyone, this is Anita Brito in conversation with the one and only Shyam Kaushal. Hello sir, कैसे हो आप?
हेलो नमस्कार जी।
अभी भी आप कंटिन्यू कर रहे हो और आपके बहुत अच्छे लाइनअप्स है, जैसे आपने बोला डंकी है, फिर आपके पास जो बंगाली मूवी है वो भी है।
ये बंगला बंधु। हाँ जी।
प्लीज उसके बारे में थोड़ा इन डेप्थ बात कीजिए, थोड़ा डंकी के बारे में हमें बात कीजिए। इट्स एन ऑल एंड आउट एक्शन फिल्म?
नो, इट इज नॉट ए, देयर इज एक्शन इन इट।
बट मुझे ये जानना है आपसे, ये पर्सनल क्वेश्चन है, आपको सबसे ज्यादा कौन से एक्टर के साथ काम करके मजा आया, मुझे ये बताइए।
मैंने अमित जी के साथ काम किया, अमित जी से लेके सभी के साथ जितने भी आगे ना सभी के साथ काम किया, फिर जो साउथ के भी मोस्टली सुपरस्टार्स उनके साथ भी काम किया। पर आज तक भगवान की दुआ से कभी किसी के साथ इशू नहीं हुआ, कभी कुछ नहीं हुआ, सबसे प्यार ही मिला है। तो मेरा एक मानना होता है, जैसा मैं आज भी ओपनली बोलता हूँ कि पिछले मैं 43 साल में मेरे को कोई बुरा आदमी नहीं मिला। तो मैं कभी सोचता नहीं हूँ कि अगर कुछ कमियां होंगी तो मेरे में होंगी, कोई बुरा आदमी नहीं है कोई भी ऐसा। जब मैं एक्टर्स मेरे जो छोटे हैं, जैसा रणबीर सिंह, रणबीर कपूर, अर्जुन कपूर, उन्होंने मेरे साथ शुरू किया, जब भी मिलते पैर छूटे हैं, ऐसा बच्चों की तरह। तो आप अगर उनको प्यार देते हो तो आपको सामने से प्यार मिलेगा ही।
He's the original Khiladi of Indian cinema, but it would be grossly unfair to call him just an actor or a member of the Indian film industry. You already know who I'm talking about. It's Akshay Kumar, and we're privileged to have him in a year that has been excellent for one of India's most well-regarded actors. Akshay Kumar is with us. Welcome, Akshay.
Thank you.
First of all, congratulations. Amazing year. Lots of great things that you've been doing and the stuff that you love the best. We've seen OMG 2, Mission Raniganj is your new film. So I want to dive straight into that. Lots of things to talk about.
Yes.
Hearing very, very good things. How's that journey been? Mission Raniganj, once again, a film based on a real life incident.
It's it happened. I don't know how much you know about it.
Yeah.
In 1989, this big, huge incident had happened, unfortunate incident. But thanks to Sardar Jaswant Singh, he went and he saved everyone. And he put his life in danger, which was a sure shot death. But as luck was with him, and as he used his mind, he's used his strength, everything, and he got them all out. And it's I don't think so. I know anybody, not many people would just risk their life to go and save somebody. And it was one of the most hardest job. So I shot in all these coal fields and all. What kind of a life they lead. Unbelievable life. It is, I can't even, I don't know, have you ever been to a...
I have seen a coal mine, but never been inside. So you went inside this one.
Yes. It is.
You know, not since Kala Patthar have we seen a film look into the lives of coal miners. And I imagine that maybe 99 out of 100 people wouldn't have even heard of the Raniganj incident before this film came about?
No, I don't think so. There are many stories which, like in airlift also, when I had told about 170,000 people got saved by Air India, they went and they got him saved. I don't think even in the media also anybody knew about it. But so I like doing these kind of films which tells you about greatness, about people, country, and things like that. So I just go ahead for it.
One of the headlines this movie made, apart from the story itself, which was very captivating to audiences who were looking forward to the film, Akshay, was the tagline that changed from India to Bharat. Tell us about that decision. Why was it decided that India would become Bharat? It was unanimously hailed and welcomed, and I think it's great.
Yeah, it was. So the producer wanted